The baby was about to fall asleep when a monster suddenly appeared out of nowhere and moved to attack. Unfortunately, this was no ordinary baby. With just a single glare, the demon self-destructed. In his previous life, he was one of the most powerful warriors ever. But now he has been reincarnated as a child in a fantasy world and the last hope of this world. The story begins in the year 1542. High at Hakone Pass in the mountains above the clouds, something unsettling was taking place. In a hidden area, children were tied upside down in the lotus position and suspended over blazing flames, slowly being burned alive. Nearby, several observers watched without emotion, casually complaining that this year's children were worthless. Then something unusual caught their attention. One of the boys hanging over the fire showed no signs of panic. He remained completely calm. Not only did he survive the ordeal, but he also demonstrated clear talent in fire release. That same boy would later become a deadly killer at a shockingly young age, eliminating numerous other ninjas as part of brutal trials. The onlookers were impressed. The boy had already mastered every known human ninja art at such a young age. An elderly man who witnessed the test smiled confidently, declaring that the child would one day lead the clan. By 1546, during the night battle of Kawagoe, the battlefield was soaked in blood. In that era, there were warriors who lived in the shadows of history, born only to die silently. From birth, they were raised as prodigies and trained relentlessly in forbidden assassination ninjutsu. These warriors were known by many names, including Kusa or grass, Rappa meaning disorderly, or Hamari. Above the chaos, a bird flew freely before landing atop a massive building, silently observing the carnage below. Inside that structure, 3 ninjas knelt before their leader. The man praised their recent surprise attack, calling it magnificent, and announced that their lordship was pleased with the overwhelming victory. This man was Hojo Jinin. He explained that their lord would reward them with stipends and supplies, expressing high expectations for their future performance. His true focus, however, is the ninja in the middle, our protagonist Fuma Kotaro V. The response is simple and obedient. After dismissing them, the 3 ninjas vanished instantly. Moments later, another figure stepped out from the shadows behind Hojo, warning him not to place too much trust in them. The Fuma clan, even among ninjas, were different. Their strength was forged through savage training that bordered on madness. The battlefield they left behind was nothing more than a heap of unrecognizable corpses. Their ninjutsu had surpassed ordinary techniques. Hojo Genin chuckles while dismissing the concern. The Fuma clan followed an absolute rule: eternal loyalty to the Hojo clan. Any violation meant immediate death. The clan was bound together by iron chains of loyalty. With a quiet laugh, he referred to them as wretched beings and convenient tools. By 1579, during the Battle of Kisagawa, an army charged forward with the goal of killing the enemy general. Yet upon reaching their target, they found only a single child standing there. The general halted in confusion, unable to understand why a child stood alone on a battlefield. The boy calmly raised a hand to his mask and slowly removed it. Then he opens his mouth, his teeth clenching, and sparks of flame erupt outward. Fire engulfed his entire body, like a living inferno. This was no ordinary attack but a fire transformation. The flames spread rapidly, consuming everything nearby. He was not alone. Beneath the sand, others had been waiting. The fiery eruption served as their signal. As they emerged, the enemy army found itself surrounded by a group of terrifying young ninjas. They did not appear as children, but as demons risen from hell. Before the enemy commander could react, the protagonist appeared behind him and crushed his head effortlessly. It was not a battle, but a massacre. Killing was everything. Each life taken meant survival. Our protagonist keeps following this path as if it is his ninja way. Eventually, time catches up with him. By 1613, at 80 years old, shackled, bloodied, and missing a leg, the once feared warrior was paraded through the streets. Villagers stared and whispered, calling him a monster and a demon. That year, Fuma Kotaro was finally captured by the Edo shogunate, the samurai. The Hojo clan, whom the Fuma had served for generations, had fallen to Toyotomi Hideyoshi during the siege of Odawara. Their hidden village was destroyed. Before execution by decapitation, a final question was asked regarding any last words. None were given. The executioner mocked the fallen legend, claiming that even Fuma Kotaro could not overcome overwhelming numbers and remarking that the Koga and Iga still had their uses. The comment provokes a chilling glare. Despite his old age, his killing intent remains sharp. Fuma Kotaro showed no further reaction. At that age, the ending no longer mattered. Deep inside, he questions why his life has stretched on for so long. Death has never been something he fears. So what force keeps him breathing all this time? When his gaze drifts upward and catches sight of a bird, recognizing the bird as a master kite, he wonders how long the creature will live and whether living as freely as it does is ever possible for him. The word freedom stirs something buried deep in his heart. Since childhood, that has always been the dream. Years pass, yet true freedom never comes within reach. Then, in a single instant, his head separates from his body. His eyes remain open as it happens. Out of nowhere, a gigantic crimson finger, as if stretching out from the gates of hell, presses against his forehead. A dark, chilling voice declares that he has been chosen. It claims to be the entity that witnesses the world through all things. A glow begins to shine. The voice proclaims that life will begin again. Everything fades into darkness. When awareness slowly returns, our protagonist opens his eyes to see small infant hands. He doesn't know where he is, and at the same time he feels suffocated. Acting on instinct, he activates his fire transformation ninjutsu. Flames erupt violently, bursting outward. Apparently he has been inside a dragon the entire time. Our protagonist is reborn as a baby, and the confusion overwhelms him. The world surrounding him is completely unfamiliar. Floating islands drift in the sky, and bizarre, otherworldly sights fill the horizon. The dragon he just destroys plummets downward, crashing directly into a castle built atop a colossal tree, utterly demolishing it. Our protagonist's small figure lands on top of the dragon. Looking up, Kotaro spots a creature approaching. Appearing before him is a goblin. The baby protagonist is surprised to see demons for the first time. The strangest part is that they are winged creatures he identifies as flying lizards. Then he smiles. After piecing things together, he realizes that he has been reincarnated. Going back in time to the moment our protagonist killed the dragon, someone happens to observe everything from below. At first she shows no reaction, but the moment she sees a baby bursting out of a dragon, her eyes widen in shock. Meanwhile, our boy savors his first taste of freedom. The narrative shifts as some context about this world is revealed. The hero Arslad defeated the Demon Lord nearly 100 years ago. He and his party were known as the Four Great Heroes, their names etched into legend. However, as time passed, another Demon King emerged. Unfortunately, this new Demon King and his race became several times stronger. Humanity began losing territories, and any land conquered by demons automatically became part of the demon realm. Speaking of which, a demon appears from the smoke and debris. The colossal goblin is the Goblin King, and he is currently stepping on the head of our protagonist. Anyways, the Goblin King expresses confusion as he tries to piece together how a human child managed to burst out of a dragon. Kicking our protagonist aside, he calls humans a bunch of weak and pathetic creatures. Our protagonist suffers no damage from the kick, leaving him confused. Just then, the Goblin King's subordinate walks up and informs their king that the sky castle of the goblins has been completely destroyed. The rest respond with one voice, cheering that the destruction of their castle is unforgivable. Following the desires of his subjects, the Goblin King moves to end our protagonist as a way to vent their anger. With their cheers as encouragement, he swings his massive sword with full force. The moment the blade lands, the ground cracks. The rest of the goblins grow excited, thinking our protagonist has been killed. But when the dust settles, our protagonist sidesteps the attack just in the nick of time. He is left momentarily stunned, thinking that was a close call. Puzzled, the Goblin King wonders how our protagonist dodged the attack when he is only a baby. Our protagonist shares the same thought. Babies have underdeveloped bones, making it difficult for them to move properly. But unfortunately for them, he is not a regular baby. Our protagonist manages to stand and thinks that much he can do. The goblins look on in shock. Anyone would question seeing a baby stand without support. But in the next moment, our protagonist vanishes. Appearing behind the Goblin King, he breaks his neck with a violent twist. Using his signature move, he unleashes his fire ninjutsu. Borrowing the surrounding flames, the Goblin King's body bursts into fire. At the same time, our protagonist intensifies the flames, burning the Goblin King to a crisp. Before the rest of the goblins can respond, they are struck by the attack as well, all while wondering how a baby could wield such mastery over high-level fire magic. Before we discover what happens next, the scene changes to a different perspective of the Sky Castle. A long staircase leads to the top of the Sky Castle. The same mysterious figure from before comes into view. As she walks to the top, her thoughts are revealed. She remembers that this used to be the territory of the elf race. She came here because she suspected our protagonist had landed in the Sky Castle together with the dragon. But upon reaching the top, she is stunned for a moment. Seeing the scattered corpses of goblins, she tries to understand what happened. Then, in the next second, she sees the person responsible for the massacre. Exhausted from the fight, our protagonist has fallen asleep. She approaches slowly, observing him and wondering if he truly did all this. Turning back her hood, she reveals herself to be a female elf. At the same time, she says that she has finally found him and calls our protagonist the last hope of humanity. Her true identity is Hyrie Titania, one of the 4 heroes from legend. In the next chapter, our protagonist sees a glimpse of his memories. His parents were killed, and his village was attacked, leaving him the sole survivor. The Fuma clan ninjas responsible for the massacre were surprised that he survived the inferno and instantly labeled him a prodigy. At the same time, our protagonist slowly wakes up, surprised and wondering why he is seeing memories from his past life. Hyrie realizes that he is finally awake. Meanwhile, our protagonist wonders about her identity. Seeing those pointed elf ears, he realizes that she is a resident of this world. Hyrie, on the other hand, gently sets him aside. Addressing our protagonist by name, she formally introduces herself. Kotaro is surprised and naturally wonders how she knows his name. As if reading his thoughts, Titania apologizes and explains that she took the liberty of going through his memories without permission, leaving our boy stunned and wondering what kind of technique that is. Putting that aside, she humbly asks for permission to stay by his side. She believes he may experience some inconvenience as a baby and offers to help. Our protagonist remains silent for a moment after hearing this. Her idea of helping makes him question her motives. Regardless, if she tries anything foolish, he will simply kill her. Since he is new to this world and limited by his baby body, relying on her for now might not be a bad idea. Putting on the brightest smile he can manage, he agrees. That cheerful smile could melt anyone's heart. As if on cue, Titania grabs him tightly, expressing her excitement that he accepted her offer. But she soon realizes she is suffocating our protagonist with her twin peaks. Because of this, she quickly apologizes, saying she got overly excited because of his adorable smile. Meanwhile, our protagonist takes a moment to process what is happening. This is the first time he has seen someone genuinely happy to help him. In addition, her eyes show no sign of killing intent or deception. Still, he refuses to let his guard down. From experience, he knows kindness can sometimes be an act, and eventually their goal might be to make him their dog. In this life, his only goal is to obtain freedom. With that thought, he suddenly falls asleep. Hyrie realizes that he must have overexerted himself. Meanwhile, our protagonist can only blame his small body since he gets tired easily. Still, after entering this world, he feels relaxed and free. To put it simply, he cannot remember the last time he slept peacefully in his previous life. His past life was filled with constant fighting, and the only gazes directed at him were filled with killing intent. He had to keep fighting just to survive. But now he is resting peacefully, and Hyrie gently urges him to sleep well. In addition, she promises that he will never have to be alone again. You see, the moment she found our protagonist, the first thing she did was use a memory reading spell to understand what happened. By doing this, she unintentionally saw memories from our protagonist's previous life. She could not believe the hardships he had to endure at such a young age. Even while resting, he had to keep one eye open just in case. Furthermore, she saw the countless people he killed just to survive. She also witnessed his brutal death, and finally saw what happened to the unfortunate goblins earlier. Even as a baby, our protagonist still carries the same sharp killing intent, and even after the fight, he never truly let his guard down. At this point, Titania feels truly sad and even sheds a tear for him. To suppress one's emotions for an entire lifetime, this makes her fear ninjas. With just one wrong step, they could easily fall and become no different from demons. However, Kotaro is different. Despite sealing away his emotions, he never lost hope. Because of this, she remembers her old companions and believes without a doubt that our protagonist is qualified to become the hero of their world. So in this life, she wants him to relax, enjoy life, and learn to express love, because now he is no longer alone. Suddenly, the Goblin King from before appears. Apparently, he did not die. He cannot believe that a human, not to mention a baby, managed to do this to the great goblin demon. Because of this, he moves to finish our protagonist. But in that instant, our protagonist's eyes suddenly snap open. With a single wave of his tiny hand, the Goblin King is instantly obliterated. Sensing something strange, Hyrie turns back. However, she becomes puzzled when she sees nothing there. Our protagonist's strike was so powerful that it destroyed even the distant mountains. With that done, he calmly returns to sleep. At the same time, Hyrie Titania realizes that they are being watched by a demon. Because of this, she activates a wind spell, instantly killing the winged demons spying on them. Now that they have been spotted, she knows their location has been compromised. It is time for her to leave the demon realm with Kotaro. Thankfully, the quickest path out of the demon realm leads through the elf realm. But unfortunately, that means passing through the dangerous Great Redwood Forest. Meanwhile, in another location within the demon realm, a secret meeting is taking place. A subordinate of the Demon King reports Hyrie Titania's location and confirms that the Fairy King has also been found. The gaunt-eyed figure, presumably the Demon King, finds the news intriguing. One of the Demon Lord's commanders is surprised that she is still alive. However, they initially conclude that the report is useless, considering Hyrie has already lost her powers. Still, the demon continues his report saying the real concern is the baby she is carrying. He then shows footage of our protagonist's fight with the Goblin King. The demons fall into stunned silence the moment they see our protagonist's eyes. They immediately realize that the baby is far from ordinary. Addressing the room, the Demon Lord finally speaks. He orders them to inform the Fairy King about the baby. He wants Hyrie Titania killed, but he wants our protagonist captured alive. With that, the meeting ends. Back to Hyrie, she is currently running while being chased by a giant bug. Actually, scratch that, not just one, but many. Meanwhile, our protagonist becomes excited, seeing such huge bugs for the first time. Hyrie now has to hold him carefully while running so he does not fall. Since they are outnumbered, their only option is to flee. But while running, she notices multiple winged monsters approaching. In response, she uses Grand Wind Rupture. The powerful spell slices all the monsters into pieces. Our protagonist is surprised. He notices that Hyrie is using something similar to ninjutsu. While she is clearly skilled, our protagonist senses a problem. The waves of monsters seem endless. Hyrie can only grit her teeth in annoyance. Because of this, she begins wishing she hadn't lost her power. Contrary to her tense expression, our protagonist seems to be having a blast. But then he notices something off. Tiny winged creatures suddenly appear between them and the monster. Upon closer look, they turn out to be fairies, putting on their most charming smiles. They ask what the monster is doing, informing it that the prey, our protagonist and Hyrie, belong to them. The monster takes one look at them before bolting off as if its life depends on it. Now our protagonist watches, confused. Turning to Hyrie, the fairies are surprised that she dared to set foot in this place. But in the next moment, they reveal their true demonic nature while calling Hyrie a filthy elf. However, Hyrie isn't too surprised. She expected this much, and mentally notes that this path cannot be avoided. As for our protagonist, he is surprisingly in a cheerful mood to have encountered yet another creature. Anyways, the demon fairies are irritated at seeing Hyrie. They plan to devour her and demand that she hand over our protagonist, but before they can react, they are suddenly grabbed in their sensitive areas. As for the one responsible, it's our protagonist. At this point, his sensitivity to danger is at 0. Meanwhile, Hyrie is stunned and doesn't understand how he managed to leave her arm. She is about to warn him that this group of fairies is extremely vicious and that he shouldn't provoke them. However, seeing how excited he looks, together with his adorable smile, she freezes with joy. Our protagonist's mood seems to be contagious. Meanwhile, the rest of the fairies become irritated seeing this. In response, they prepare poison spikes from their mouths. Seeing this, Hyrie Titania is in the process of warning our protagonist, but it is already too late. Multiple spikes have been shot straight at him. Moving quickly, our protagonist catches all the spikes in a single motion. Seeing this, the fairies are left in shock. Turning serious, his eyes flash with killing intent. Our protagonist sends the spikes back to their senders. Each fairy is stabbed by the poison spikes. With that, they fall like insects that have been exterminated. One wonders how it is even possible for a human child to move like that. Meanwhile, our protagonist thinks to himself that he can't resist the urge to react whenever someone tries to kill him. Now his good mood is completely ruined, and once again he begins feeling sleepy. Suddenly, a massive spike is sent his way. Moving by instinct, Hyrie saves him. Our protagonist is stunned for a moment, not because of the attack, but likely because this is the first time someone has put themselves in danger just to save him. Hyrie, in the process of saving him, suffers an injury to her back. Since the spike contains paralyzing poison, she finds herself unable to move. Seeing this, one of the surviving fairies lets out a mocking laugh, because their mother has arrived. The mother not only looks like a mature version of the fairies, but also several times more dangerous. She too recognizes Hyrie and expresses surprise that she came here of her own accord. In response, Hyrie mutters Elva's name. Elva tells Hyrie to hand over the protagonist, adding that Hyrie must die by her hands in order for Elva to be recognized as one of the 10 demons. Hyrie, on the other hand, can hardly believe what she is hearing and is about to ask why. But Elva silences her by pulling a grotesque spear from her mouth. She launches an attack, telling Hyrie that she will no longer take orders from an elf. Hyrie manages to dodge and grits her teeth while holding the protagonist. Seeing this, Elva expresses a bit of surprise that Hyrie can still move despite being poisoned. However, she decides to increase the concentration of the poison and finish her off, struggling to stand despite her current situation. Hyrie swears that she will never hand over the protagonist under any circumstances. Hearing this, the protagonist silently observes her determined yet firm expression. In response, Elva tells her to die while unleashing an attack called Fairy King Grand Dance. Multiple destructive attacks are launched as Elva charges toward Hyrie. However, she is stopped midway by a small finger, leaving her in shock. Hyrie, already aware of the protagonist's strength, is still taken by surprise seeing him stop Elva's devastating attack with just a finger. Meanwhile, Kotaro admits to having a strange feeling he does not understand. This is the first time he feels the need to protect someone other than himself. Elva is shocked that he stopped her attack with just a finger. Now she begins to understand why the Demon King wanted the protagonist. Meanwhile, Kotaro thinks to himself that he is constantly limited because of his body. Regardless, there is still one technique that could work. Waving his finger, he activates a ninjutsu called Finger Sever. Immediately, Elva's body is severed in multiple places by an invisible attack. She groans in pain, demanding to know what the protagonist did to her. Meanwhile, the protagonist's small hand noticeably trembles after using the attack. But suddenly Hyrie stops him, thinking he plans to attack again. She insists that the protagonist spare Elva. Seeing this, Elva asks what Hyrie is playing at. Hyrie replies that she wants to save her. The protagonist seems confused by this explanation. After all, he is not the type to show mercy after being attacked first. Because of this, Hyrie explains that the elves and fairies once lived together in the same forest. She continues, saying that back then this place was called the Forest of the Giant Trees and was bountiful. In addition, the elves and fairies formed an alliance that helped grow and protect the forest. Since the elves were superior in intellect, they governed the forest, while the fairies, with their numbers and combat ability, protected it from threats. Because of this arrangement, her people used the fairies since they were considered inferior in both intellect and civilization, being used again and again. The two races that should have shared mutual understanding instead accumulated years of disdain and hatred toward her people. In the end, war became inevitable. Hyrie admits that at that time she was young and powerless to do anything. The protagonist understands, as the same thing happens in his own world. From experience, he knows what it feels like to constantly be used. Still, Hyrie had such a strong conviction at a young age. But the moment she reveals that the war happened over 150 years ago, the protagonist is shocked. He had always thought Hyrie was a girl in her 20s, but she is actually much older than him. Elva interrupts while undergoing some kind of transformation, saying that history rots her ears. She laughs, thinking the earlier poison must have already circulated through Hyrie's entire body. Still undergoing her transformation, she tells Hyrie that the only way to alleviate the regret of the fairies is by killing her. In response, Hyrie tells her to stop, insisting that continued conflict is meaningless and will eventually destroy her. Elva shouts at her to shut up, adding that this is her mission. She explains that she too was once like Hyrie, a powerless princess who could do nothing. But this time, she swears to kill her to avenge the fairies. Meanwhile, Hyrie notices the magic seal visible on Elva's neck. She recognizes it as a contract seal, and a chilling thought surfaces in her heart. Elva confirms it, saying Hyri would likely do the same in her place before revealing that this is the power bestowed upon her by the Demon King. A flashback to the past shows that Elva and Hyri once knew each other. At that time, Hyri asked her friend why conflicts never seemed to end. Humans, demons, and the beast race were always fighting, and every race seemed to be in constant conflict. Because of this, Hyri feared for the future between their races. In response, Elva reassured her friend not to worry. Regardless of the circumstances, she reminded Hyri that they were friends, and the kind of conflict Hyri feared between the fairies and elves would never happen. Hyri seemed stunned at first before showing a smile at this reassurance. Back in the present, and now fully transformed, Elva comments about the overwhelming power she possesses, adding that this is the power bestowed upon her by the Demon King, and now it was time for Hyri to die. Meanwhile, Hyri feels both annoyed and pitiful toward her friend. Around Hyri's neck is an amulet. She notes that she had been saving it for a particular occasion, but for Elva's sake, she has no choice but to use it. Meanwhile, Elva mistakes Hyri's contemplative state as fear that has left her unable to speak. With that, she rushes forward with an attack called Fairy King Grand Dance Crucifix. She laughs, thinking to herself that she must have crushed Hyri. But when the dust settles, she finds a golden sphere at the center of her attack. Within the magical sphere, the protagonist watches Hyri as wings suddenly appear on her back out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Elva is both shocked and puzzled by the enormous amount of magical energy radiating from Hyri. This was supposed to be impossible, considering that Hyri should have lost her powers. Meanwhile, Hyri, now in her sage mode, begins casting buff spells. First, she removes all debuffs, followed by stamina recovery. With that, her injuries begin to heal at a visible and astonishing rate. Meanwhile, the protagonist, feeling the recovery effect of the magic, wonders what kind of ninjutsu this could be. At the same time, Elva begins to realize what is happening, but still finds it impossible to believe. Hyri has returned to her prime, the same power she once had when she faced the previous Demon King alongside the hero. Still, Hyri continues magnifying her power. Once it is enough, she points straight at Elva and declares that she will save her. She chants a spell called Freezing Sacred Stigmata. And just like that, Elva reverts to her original form. Seeing this, Hyri tells her that she is no longer bound and wants her friend to see beyond the regrets of their people. When she reminds Elva that they were once friends, Elva becomes emotional. She realizes that Hyri still remembers something from over 100 years ago. Out of spite, and because the fairies lost the war against the elves, she went to the demons. At that time, she had been easily swayed by their words. Pulling herself together, she suddenly notices the protagonist approaching her. Just as things seem to be settling down, Elva is suddenly crushed by the appearance of another demon. The protagonist is left stunned as the newly appeared demon lets out a mocking laugh. She scoffs, saying that Elva ending up like this after making a contract with the Demon King is truly pathetic. She says the best feeling is watching someone writhe in agony beneath her feet. She says this while stepping on the agonizing Elva. The demon turns out to be one of the 10 demons, Apru. Because of this, Hyri erupts in rage, ignoring her. Apru turns to Elva and continues crushing her beneath her foot. She comments that not only is Elva's transformation unstable, but the contract seal is also going haywire. It seems Elva could not handle it after all. Hyri becomes even more enraged. Next, she activates 2 magic spells. First, she uses magic transfer to pull Elva and the protagonist out of harm's way. Then she unleashes the highest rank fire magic, Karmic Inferno Annihilation. The magic is high rank for a reason. More than half of the forest is incinerated. Meanwhile, Hyri uses the opportunity to catch her breath. Once the dust settles, Apru appears completely unharmed after the high-rank spell. She even complains about being suddenly attacked and that her outfit is now covered in dirt. Hyri breaks into a cold sweat seeing this. She never imagined her strongest fire spell would not leave even a scratch. Apru becomes furious and launches herself forward. Hyri reacts by using barrier magic. Immediately they are surrounded and covered with massive boulders. Apru sees this attempt and calls it useless. She then launches several punches that destroy the boulders. Unaware, Hyri had just baited her to come closer. Now Hyri uses the same magic she used on Elva to try to remove the Demon King's contract seal from Apru. But for some reason, it does not work. Apru acknowledges the attempt but adds that Hyri is far from the monster she once was when she was the strongest elf and the great sage. After that failed attempt, Hyri's power begins to deplete rapidly. Meanwhile, Apru calls it a letdown. Even if Hyri is not as strong as before, she was still expecting more. It is just unfortunate that Hyri's sealed power was only temporary, but it does not really matter since Hyri is about to die. With a mischievous smile, Apru decides to reveal something interesting about Elva before Hyri dies. Apparently, it has to do with the time Elva came crawling to the Demon Lord for help. Elva was asked whether she felt regret and humiliation for her fallen comrades. In addition to the rage inside her, Apru insisted that Elva should let those dark emotions consume her. Only then would the Demon Lord be pleased and grant her power. But now Apru bursts into laughter, calling Elva as dumb as a bug. The Demon Lord only intended to use them as pawns. Since the fairies were numerous, they were easy to exploit. It is no wonder the elves used them again and again. The fairies were simply easy to manipulate. Hyri curses Apru for using her friend. In response, Apru tells Hyri that the expression she just made makes her want to kill her. Hearing the word kill is enough for our protagonist to swear that he will make Apru wish she had died as a child. Seeing her expression, the demon laughs. While playfully preparing her attack, she announces her intent to kill and even permits Hyri to scream. With that said, she launches several demonic explosive fists without holding back. But the protagonist intervenes. He blocks all the attacks, leaving the demon stunned. Amidst her confusion, the protagonist's eyes glow with killing intent as he activates another ninjutsu called Redirection. In an instant, the demon is obliterated. The protagonist explains that Redirection is a fundamental taijutsu technique that temporarily stores the received force in the body before releasing it. Meanwhile, Hyri watches in stunned amazement. At the same time, the protagonist reflects on himself. Killing had always been everything to him, even a means of survival. He had even killed his own emotions simply because that was the only way to survive as a ninja. But now he feels another strange emotion, different from the moment when he wanted to protect Hyri. Perhaps it is because he was once in the same position as Elva. The protagonist realizes, with tears in his eyes, that he is experiencing human emotions again, affection, compassion, sadness, and grief all returning at once. Meanwhile, the demon struggles to move. She wonders what kind of technique the protagonist used, considering she is supposed to be protected by the Demon Lord's contract seal. Speaking of the Demon Lord's contract seals, Hyri begins to think. She believes the protagonist's ninjutsu comes from another dimension, and perhaps this allows his technique to ignore the contract's defenses. Since her previous attack failed, she realizes in shock that the protagonist's ninjutsu may be the natural and best counter against demons. The demon seems to think the same while commenting that it was not bad. She then uses a recovery spell to regenerate her entire body. Making a lovesick expression, she expresses interest in the protagonist. She comments on his eyes, saying they show that he has killed countless people. In addition, they reveal sadness, despair, loneliness, and hatred, basically all dark emotions. All of these attributes are perfect for becoming a demon. She proclaims that the protagonist is destined to be on their side and offers him an invitation to join them so they can rule the world together. Kotaro thinks to himself that this is just like Earth, where the strong constantly try to dominate the weak. In truth, he is fed up, so in response to her invitation, he sticks out his tongue, indicating that he has no interest. Seeing this, the demon bursts into laughter. She then activates her full power, and her muscles grow massively in size. She intends to partially cripple the protagonist so she can take him to the demons. Hyri begins to panic upon seeing this. Apparently, it is only now that she realizes the demon they are facing is one of the 10 demons. As the demon moves to attack, Hyri thinks to herself that no matter how strong the protagonist is, there must be a limit to what he can handle. Because of this, she shouts and tells him to run, but the protagonist is so overpowered that he easily stops the demon's full-force attack. The ground cracks beneath his feet. Now the demon is left in utter shock and disbelief for the second time. At the same time, the protagonist uses redirection, and the demon explodes into pieces. Seeing this, Hyri's mouth hangs open in complete disbelief. A wave of exhaustion hits the protagonist, and Hyri quickly moves to catch him before he falls. She thanks him for saving them and assures him that he can rest now. With that, the protagonist falls asleep. Watching this, Elva chuckles weakly. She comments on the protagonist's incredible strength. To obliterate one of the 10 demons with a single move was something she never imagined. Hyrai is shocked that Elva is still alive and wants to heal her. But Elva tells her there is no need. Now that she has lost the Demon Lord's contract, her body will naturally decay. In a moment of reflection, she realizes that she made the same mistake as her people. She was simply too greedy and tried to obtain more than she deserved. Now she insists that Hyrai leave immediately. Because she and April failed. The Demon King will send more demons and will do anything to obtain the protagonist. In addition, she gives Hyrai a parting gift. The gift is an S-rank equipment called the Fairy Boots. It increases movement speed by 3 times, and in some cases even allows levitation to avoid detection. Hyrai immediately feels the effect of the boots. It almost feels as if she is weightless. Elva also suggests heading east of the forest if Hyrai has nowhere else to go. Beyond the Warlord Mountains lies Hydrat. It is the only place that constantly resists the Demon Realm's invasion. It is basically the last stronghold against the demons. Since they are always looking for strong people, Elva begins to say something about the protagonist. But Hyrai interrupts her mid-sentence, insisting that she has the wrong idea. She explains that the protagonist considers her a friend, and she feels the same way, just like they once were over 100 years ago. In addition, Hyrai promises to make their childhood dream a reality and create a peaceful world for both the fairies and elves. This makes Elva reflect on the past. In her final moments, she smiles and looks forward to the day that dream becomes real. Once Elva fully disintegrates, Hyrai quietly tells her to rest well. The next scene takes place somewhere else within the forest. A fragment of April lands on the ground. The moment it touches the ground, she regenerates completely. Even she cannot believe she survived, but she later realizes it is thanks to the Demon Lord's contract seal that saved her. Even worse, she still cannot understand how the protagonist managed to stop her most powerful attack with such ease. But in the next second, the Demon King speaks, expressing his disappointment and making her panic. She immediately begs for mercy as the seal begins to suffocate her. The Demon King expresses regret for saving her after her clan was wiped out by humans and granting her power. As the seal tightens, she begs the Demon King for a second chance. However, the Demon Lord is done with the ogres, calling them a lower species and wondering why he ever expected much from her. And just like that, she is suffocated to death. Meanwhile, another demon has been observing everything that happened. Emerging from the trees, Azras, one of the 10 demons, thinks it might as well seize this opportunity and take all the credit. In the next scene, Hyrai could see the path ahead leading toward Hydrat. Finally, they arrived at their destination. Only then did she finally catch her breath. Meanwhile, our protagonist slowly opens his eyes. Hyrai informs him that they have arrived at the Warlord Mountains. She also reveals that this is the same place where the previous hero battled the former Demon King. And even now, the battle against the demons continues. The royal capital of Hydrat is the only place that hasn't been influenced by the demons. As she explains this, she thinks about her former companion and realizes that our protagonist is the one they desperately need. An explosion erupts on the battlefield, and more demons suddenly appear. One demon wonders aloud why, no matter how many enemies they kill, the humans just keep coming. In response, a human knight steps forward, saying that was his line. In the middle of the battle, a priest aids and heals a fallen knight. The fallen knight insists they hold on a little longer, knowing reinforcements will arrive soon. Because of this, the remaining demons switch their focus to the priest. If she is taken out, no one can heal the knights. In an instant, they are sliced like butter. The figure responsible seems to be the reinforcements who casually solo all the demons. Coincidentally, this happens to be Hyrai's party member. Mira Barbados, a beast lady and one of the 4 heroes, complains about the stench of the demons, saying she can't stand it. She vows to kill every last one. Seeing this, the demon from before begins to tremble. Not because she is a former hero, but because her alias is known as the Goddess of War. In the blink of an eye, Mira kills the remaining demons, proving that her name is no empty title. At the same time, Hyrai is heading with our protagonist toward the city. Meanwhile, Mira catches the scent of blood. The smell is so thick that she admits she hasn't sensed anything like it before. It's almost as if the smell clings to a person's very soul. Because of this, she naturally assumes the figure must be a demon. She leaps and appears in front of Hyrai, stopping her blade inches away when she realizes it is her. Mira expresses genuine surprise, wondering what brings Hyrai to the battlefield. At the same time, Azras appears from atop a rock. He observes the scene, commenting that he was correct. Hyri has really fled to the Warlord Mountains, and notes that this place is the ideal battlefield for him. In addition, he acknowledges that our protagonist cannot be underestimated. He plans to use this opportunity to wipe them all out in an instant. We cut back to Miria, who is about to ask what Hyri is doing here when her eyes suddenly land on our protagonist. Puzzled, she turns toward Hyri, clearly about to ask where this baby came from. But before she can even finish the thought, our protagonist suddenly vanishes, only to reappear right on top of her head, grabbing onto her ears. Unfortunately for him, he has no idea that those ears are one of her most sensitive spots. Meanwhile, our protagonist is absolutely thrilled. After all, seeing humans with cat ears is something straight out of fantasy. Sadly for him, the ride doesn't last long. Miria quickly grabs him and tosses him straight to the ground in pure frustration. The moment she declares that she's going to kill him, Hyri immediately jumps in and begs her to stop. But before things can escalate any further, the battlefield suddenly erupts with multiple explosions, drawing everyone's attention. Cracks spread across the ground, and from those cracks, massive pillars begin to rise, pillars made entirely from the bones of the fallen. The group can only stare in confusion as the horrifying structures continue to rise. Of course, this is all Azra's doing. He calmly explains that the Warlord Mountains have been locked in war for many years, which means there are tens of thousands of corpses buried beneath the battlefield, and every single one of them now belongs to him. With that, he casts his necromancy spell and sends the towering pillars of corpses straight toward Hyri and the others. The goddess of war immediately leaps into action, slicing through pillar after pillar while loudly expressing her irritation toward demons. But even after unleashing one of her most powerful attacks, it still isn't enough. Hyri quickly realizes the terrifying truth. There may be no end to these things. As she cuts down another wave of skeletons, she tells Miria that she suspects a demon must be controlling them from somewhere. But before she can finish her sentence, she suddenly freezes. It feels like someone just stepped on her tail. And speaking of her tail, she immediately demands to know what our protagonist is doing with it. Meanwhile, our protagonist simply ignores her completely. In fact, he seems to find the fluffy tail extremely comfortable. This only makes Miria even more furious. Once again, she grabs him and throws him straight to the ground, swearing that this time she will definitely kill him. But Azras has been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. Seizing the moment, he launches a sneak attack. His bone technique, refined over thousands of years, is powerful enough to pierce through anything. With absolute confidence, he shouts for them to die. Unfortunately for him, Miria catches his scent immediately. With a cold glare, she comments that the foolish demon has finally decided to show himself. Azras only laughs in response and asks why she looks so angry. He then reveals something shocking. The demons have been toying with them this entire time. After all, if the Demon King truly wanted to destroy Hydrat, he could wipe it out in a single move. That statement alone is enough to push the goddess into a rage. She immediately lunges forward. But to her complete shock, her sword shatters the moment it collides with Azras's attack. For a brief moment, disbelief fills her eyes. And right then, our protagonist suddenly appears in front of her. At that moment, Miria realizes something absolutely bone-chilling. The strange scent she noticed earlier, the one she assumed was coming from Hyri, was never from Hyri at all. It has been coming from our protagonist the entire time. Meanwhile, our protagonist seems completely unfazed. Instead, he finds Azras's corpse-controlling technique rather interesting. After all, the Fuma clan possesses a very similar forbidden art, a technique known as summoning from the underworld. Before proceeding, our protagonist gives us some context about the Fuma clan's ninjutsu. Among the many ninja clans like the Iga, Koga, Saseki, Mochizuki, and finally Negoro, none have ever managed to reach the hidden realm. However, by constantly wandering along the thin border between life and death, a ninja can obtain the power to communicate with the dead. But gaining this ability isn't easy. To master such a technique, a ninja must endure insane training, and those who succeed often become monsters in their own right. In short, the Fuma clan's ninjutsu is said to be as vast as the spirits of the dead themselves. With this in mind, our protagonist begins summoning the sleeping souls of the battlefield, letting drops of his blood fall onto the ground. He forms a blood oath demanding that every wandering soul come forth. This is the 12 forbidden arts of the Fuma clan. His blood acts as a gateway, and the being he summons rises straight from the underworld. Seeing this, Azras freezes on the spot. Miria and Hyri wear the same stunned expression. It's almost as if they already know who our protagonist has just summoned. Azras's attack is effortlessly stopped by the mysterious summon. And in that moment, as everyone watches in stunned silence, finally realizing the identity of the one our protagonist has called forth. That person is Sylvain, the previous demon lord who died more than 100 years ago. Naturally, anyone witnessing this would begin to question reality itself. After all, over a century ago, the Demon King was defeated by nothing short of a miracle. And now, without the presence of the old hero Arslad, Miria begins to fear the worst. However, to everyone's shock, Sylvain suddenly drops to his knees before our protagonist. He silently awaits his master's instructions. Our protagonist simply stares at him, completely confused. Even the war goddess is left in shock. Hyri already knows the terrifying potential behind our protagonist's ninjutsu, but bringing the Demon King back to life and forcing him to obey is something on an entirely different level. Even Azras can't believe what he's seeing. Forget capturing the child. This baby is a threat that must be eliminated immediately. With that thought, Azras moves. He immobilizes the Demon King and launches an attack using his indestructible bones. Unfortunately for him, a Demon King is still a Demon King. Sylvain stops Azras's attack with nothing more than a single finger. Azras freezes, still trying to process what just happened. Then Sylvain casually flicks his finger, calling him annoying. In the next instant, Azras is erased from existence. The Demon King's contract seal, the one meant to control him, instantly becomes meaningless. The power displayed proves something terrifying. It truly was a miracle that the hero and his party managed to defeat the Demon King in the past. Now, turning toward his master, Sylvain patiently awaits his next command. In response, our protagonist simply claps his hands, like a child who just saw fireworks for the first time. Meanwhile, Hyri struggles to believe what she just witnessed. One of the 10 demons was killed just like that. Even more shocking, our protagonist somehow turned the former Demon King into his subordinate. Miria reacts in utter disbelief, demanding to know who the hell that baby is. After all, Hyri previously mentioned that she was going to find the last hope of the world. Naturally, Miria begins to wonder if that baby is the one her friend was talking about. In response, Hyri confirms it without hesitation. With a bright smile, she proudly declares that our protagonist is the last hope of the world. For once, Miria is completely speechless. Meanwhile, Sylvain quietly takes the opportunity to observe his surroundings. His gaze sweeps across the battlefield. He casually remarks that although he doesn't know how much time has passed since his defeat, nothing seems to have changed, including Miria and her friend. The world remains exactly the same. Hearing that, Miria instantly grows furious. She roars back, blaming the demons for being the root cause of everything, and asks if Sylvain really thinks he has the right to sound disappointed. After a brief moment of silence, Sylvain calmly corrects her. According to him, humans are the real cause. He explains that the demon race had been suppressed for ages and labeled as enemies for reasons no one could even properly explain. Eventually, he simply grew tired of that sentiment. And as fate would have it, he happened to be born as the strongest demon, so he chose to resist. But now, none of that matters anymore. Trying to explain such things in a world full of fools is pointless. Now he assumes he will simply spend the rest of his existence as our protagonist's summon. But to everyone's surprise, our protagonist suddenly speaks his first words. More precisely, his first sentence. He tells Sylvain that he is free, and that he hates oppression. Those words leave everyone completely stunned. Miria looks at the baby with a puzzled expression before turning to Hyri, asking what he just said. As for Hyri, she can barely contain her excitement. Hearing our protagonist speak for the first time fills her with joy, and without wasting another second, she picks him up. Deep in her thoughts, she admits she feels exactly the same way. Meanwhile, Sylvain bursts into deep, hearty laughter. Apparently, there's always an odd one out in every group. In response, our protagonist stretches his tiny hand forward. Sylvain looks confused for a moment before quietly asking if the child wants him to join them. His cheerful expression makes it clear he wouldn't mind at all. But suddenly, the ground begins to tremble. Before anyone can react, the earth violently cracks open. Gigantic hands erupt from the ground. The massive hands rise high above the battlefield, stretching toward the sky. Our protagonist's group now stands in the palm of one of those enormous hands. While Hyri quickly checks on the baby, Miria looks around in confusion, wondering what could possibly be happening this time. At this point, the day has already delivered far too many surprises. Sylvain, on the other hand, simply watches in silence. Shadowy figures begin appearing at the tips of each giant finger. Soon the group realizes the truth. They are demons. Miria clicks her tongue in disgust, complaining about how much she hates the smell of demons. At the same time, she senses the magical power of the new Demon King. Even she never imagined he would be this powerful. Meanwhile, Hyri silently analyzes the situation. The appearance of the 10 demons can only mean one thing. They are determined to secure our protagonist. Her gaze then lands on one particular demon carrying a massive sword. For some reason, he feels strangely familiar. Breaking the tense silence, one of the demons suddenly bursts into laughter. He remarks that our protagonist killing both the 10th and 9th demon is quite impressive. After all, it has been decades since there was a vacant seat among the 10 demons. In fact, the Demon King himself is delighted that such an interesting diversion has appeared. Then Zenova, the third rank of the 10 demons, steps forward and demands that the group entertain them. Our protagonist clearly didn't expect reinforcements to arrive. Even worse, he's currently too weak to even move his body. As usual, Miria immediately grows furious at the word entertain. Feeling insulted, she clenches her fists and declares that she will kill Zenova first. But the moment she says that, a magic spell is cast. And just like that, Miria is struck by an attack that erases a portion of her body. She freezes in shock. The demon responsible, Deperu mockingly tells her to get lost. They aren't interested in small fries. Furious, Miria demands to know what kind of magic he just used. But before she can react again, her body suddenly becomes petrified, trapped in what appears to be an ice-like spell. The demon admires the result like a work of art. He even suggests keeping Miria as another art piece. The one responsible is Hildark, the 7th-rank demon. Meanwhile, Hyri watches everything unfold in shock. She stands frozen, unable to do anything. Then suddenly, a massive hand slams down on her, pinning her to the ground. As a result, she loses hold of our protagonist. Another demon appears beside her along with a familiar creature. She introduces herself as April, the 8th demon, and her familiar is called Galon. Coldly, she tells Hyri to sit still. Meanwhile, our protagonist tumbles across the ground and lands near Sylvain. As always, the former Demon King silently observes the situation. Another figure suddenly launches an attack at both of them. Sylvain notices instantly and blocks the strike with one hand. Recognition flashes in his eyes. He immediately realizes who the attacker is. To everyone's shock, the one attacking them is none other than the former hero Arslad, the very man who defeated the Demon King long ago. Seeing this, Hyri mutters his name in disbelief. She can't even begin to understand how the hero ended up becoming a demon. At that very moment, a hand suddenly emerges from a tear in space, catching Sylvain's attention. Stepping out from the distortion is the current Demon King, Jura. He casually greets Sylvain, as if the two of them have known each other for a very long time. Sylvain is caught off guard. For a moment he failed to sense Jura's presence. Meanwhile, Jura suddenly apologizes for touching him. He casually explains that his magic power is so overwhelming that anything he touches tends to break. But since Sylvain was once the Demon King, he assumed Sylvain would be able to handle it. Sylvain's expression stiffens. The spot where Jura touched him suddenly deforms, twisting into something grotesque. Watching from the side, Hyri feels a deep sense of dread. At this rate, everyone is going to die. Even though Sylvain is on their side, she realizes he doesn't stand a chance against the current Demon King. So she reaches a painful conclusion. The only thing she can do now is save our protagonist. At that very moment, Sylvain suddenly leaps into the air, gathering an enormous amount of magical energy. While airborne, he casts multiple highest-rank elemental spells and merges them into a single devastating attack. Hyri watches in shock. Even in her prime, she would never have been able to pull something like that off. As she reflects on Sylvain's earlier battle with Azras, something finally clicks in her mind. She remembers something Sylvain said 100 years ago. It was never explicitly mentioned in the narrative, but this display makes it painfully clear. Perhaps the real reason Sylvain lost back then was because he wanted to. Just like Miria, Hyri now believes their victory back then was purely luck. The combined elemental attack crashes down on the battlefield, erasing and drastically altering the landscape. But to Servain's shock, Arslad and Jura remain standing. Not only are they alive, they barely received a scratch. Seeing Servain's stunned expression, Jura calmly acknowledges his strength. However, he then reveals a terrifying truth. No matter how powerful Servain may be, he will never be able to harm him, because Jura is no longer just a demon. He is a being that transcends demons. In other words, Jura is a demon god, and as a result, no magic attack can ever harm him. Hyrie instantly understands what that means. The only one who could possibly stand against the current Demon King is our protagonist. In desperation, she calls out to him. Exhausted, the baby struggles to move, frustrated by the weakness of his current body. Hyrie seems to read his thoughts. She pauses for a moment before revealing a small smile. At the same time, she tells him not to forget the emotions he felt just now. Our protagonist doesn't fully understand why she's saying this. But regardless, Hyrie quickly forms a plan. Knowing that he's the only one with even the slightest chance against the Demon King, she decides to save him even at the cost of her own strength. She casts a flash spell, creating a blinding burst of light that momentarily blinds Jura. Then she shouts, ordering Servain to flee with our protagonist. She believes that not only can the child stop the Demon King, but that he will also change their world. Without hesitation, Servain grabs the baby. Dark wings burst from his back. In the next instant, he shoots into the sky and disappears at the speed of sound. Moments after they leave, one of the demons complains loudly. She expresses her dissatisfaction, saying Servain and the baby ran away before she even had the chance to play. She is the sixth demon, Ramgris. Meanwhile, the fifth demon, Ignis, boasts about his incredible speed, claiming that capturing our protagonist should belong to him. But before he can move, Jura orders him to wait. The Demon King calmly reveals his plan. He intends to lure our protagonist to the demon side by using Hyrie and Myria as bait. Considering that the 10 demons now have vacant seats, turning them into tools isn't such a bad idea. Another demon suddenly bursts into laughter, clearly impressed by the Demon King's brilliance. This one happens to be the first demon. Surprisingly, it's a slime. Yes, the creature often considered the weakest monster holds the highest rank among the 10 demons. And perhaps, it is also the strongest of them all. The scene cuts to our protagonist and Servain after their escape. Our protagonist slowly wakes up and realizes that they are flying through the sky. As usual, he reacts with pure excitement. Servain notices immediately that the baby is awake. Kotaro gazes at the endless scenery in awe, marveling at the breathtaking view below them. In contrast, the former Demon King doesn't seem impressed at all. Still, our protagonist curiously asks how far this world extends and what lies beyond the horizon. Servain understands the curiosity. After all, the child is still a baby, but he casually responds that the world is actually quite boring. Kotaro immediately protests. He says he doesn't understand what Servain means because, to him, everything feels exciting. More importantly, he is free. Listening carefully to the way Kotaro speaks and recalling the mysterious technique that transcended the natural laws of their world, Servain reaches a startling conclusion. Our protagonist must be someone from another dimension. Even after being dead for over 100 years, Servain's mind remains incredibly sharp. With that realization, he decides to tell the boy more about their world. He explains that beyond the horizon lies the Dragon's Nest, a floating sky island so dangerous that even demons avoid approaching it. Below the world, on the other hand, lies the Abyss, a mysterious depth said to contain legendary equipment, ancient treasures, and terrifying creatures sleeping in the darkness. However, no one can confirm these rumors, because everyone who enters the Abyss never returns. Servain also mentions the existence of a world tree, a colossal tree that stretches far into the heavens. In truth, the world is so vast that even Servain himself has never managed to explore all of it. As for where they are heading now, Servain reveals their destination. He is taking Kotaro to the Tower of Time. Inside that tower, time itself can be manipulated. He chose that place because of Kotaro's current weakness. Kotaro immediately understands what Servain means. His biggest limitation right now is his body. Growing serious for a moment, the baby admits that he feels regret for not being able to save Hyrie and Myria. However, he confidently adds that nothing will happen to them. Servain naturally asks what he means. assuming that the two women must have already died. Kotaro shakes his head. He reveals that he overheard the demon's entire conversation before escaping. Servain nods in approval, clearly impressed. After flying for a while longer, they finally arrive at a tower floating high in the sky. Servain gently lands at the entrance. He then tells Kotaro that this is as far as he can go. Curious, Kotaro asks what Servain plans to do now. When the baby addresses him as Demon King, Servain's face shows a rare hint of embarrassment. Turning his face away slightly, he admits something unexpected. He says he has been influenced by Kotaro. Because of that, he asks the boy to stop calling him the Demon Lord. He has grown to hate the very idea of domination. From now on, he would rather be called simply by his name. With that said, Servain spreads his wings and prepares to leave. Kotaro happily waves goodbye, shouting that Servain should fly him around again whenever they meet next time. Just then, a mysterious figure appears behind him. The man seems surprised to see Servain acting so differently from the Demon King he once knew. It's clear that our protagonist has changed him. The figure calmly notes that he has been watching everything from inside the tower. He then invites Kotaro to come inside. Only then is it revealed. The mysterious figure is Bot, one of the four great heroes. Information about the Tower of Time is finally revealed. Originally, the tower wasn't located in the sky. In the past, countless people traveled to this place for a single reason: to regain their youth. Because of that, chaos soon followed. People began killing each other, launching invasions, and even starting wars just to seize control of the tower. To stop the bloodshed, Bot lifted the entire tower into the sky and became its guardian. While explaining all of this, our protagonist simply stands there staring at him the entire time. Bot continues speaking, revealing that he was given this duty by the hero Arslad after the Demon King was defeated. Since Bot does not have a natural lifespan, he was the perfect being to watch over the tower forever. But in the next moment, he realizes something. Our protagonist wasn't listening at all. Kotaro, seeing a Bot for the first time, assumes the strange figure is simply wearing a weird metal hat over his head. Annoyed, the Bot smacks him and angrily explains that this is his actual face. Finally, he properly introduces himself. His name is B28, the administrator of the Tower of Time. He also makes it clear that this is not a place anyone can casually enter. Because of that, our protagonist asks what he needs to do in order to go inside. B28 replies that it depends on him. But before he can even finish speaking, our protagonist somehow climbs on top of the robot's metal head and starts messing with him again. Later, Kotaro is finally taken inside the tower. Looking around, he asks B28 why everything inside is completely pitch black. Instead of giving any explanation, the robot simply wishes him good luck. The moment the door closes behind him, a magic circle appears beneath Kotaro's feet. Before he can even process what's happening, a blinding light erupts, and just like that, he is sent into the past. Our protagonist immediately recognizes the moment. This is a day he remembers all too well. The sight of it alone is enough to make his expression turn serious. It was the day meant to determine the next Fuma Kotaro, the leader of the Fuma clan. After a brutal bloodbath, only 2 participants remained. Whoever survived this final battle would automatically become the next leader of the clan. Back then, our protagonist surrendered. The female participant standing before him demanded to know what he was doing. In response, he simply told her that she was the one person he could never bring himself to kill. At first, it sounded like she might have been stronger than him, but the truth was much simpler. Our protagonist was just being merciful. Then suddenly, she vanished. In the next instant, she reappeared behind him, radiating pure killing intent. But our protagonist reacted immediately. In the end, he killed her. Surprisingly, the girl showed no regrets. Confused, our protagonist asked why she did it. She calmly reminded him of the truth. They were both ninjas, nameless blades who existed for nothing but killing. Those who cannot kill will eventually die themselves. Still, she admitted something strange. The person who had killed the least, the one whose heart remained untouched by murder, was actually the strongest of them all. She also confessed that she had been influenced by him. For a long time, she had secretly dreamed of being free. In other words, our protagonist had unknowingly killed the girl he loved. What a tragic life. Even now, Kotaro admits he never forgot the dream they once shared, but somewhere along the way, he abandoned it. Not because he wanted to, but because he believed it was impossible to reach. However, things are different now. This time he swears he will achieve freedom. Not just for himself, but for both of them. The scene then shifts back to the present. B28 walks into the room, clearly impressed. He explains that life itself is a battle against despair. Those who are crushed by it are swallowed by darkness. But those who face their deepest wounds and overcome them are the ones who deserve another chance at life. That is the true purpose of the Tower of Time. It was designed only for those who can confront and overcome their greatest scars. As the light fades, our protagonist stands there once more, now with his fully restored, powerful body. B28 nods approvingly and comments that this outcome was expected. After all, he is someone Hyrie personally recognized. Our protagonist simply nods. Then, with unwavering determination, he says he's ready to go save her. Power surges through him as he stands upright. Our protagonist is completely ripped, now looking like a teenager around 15 or 16. He notes that his body wouldn't be able to hold him back anymore. In addition, he finds it very easy to move. He can feel every fiber of his muscles stretch, and he is truly excited. Meanwhile, Bot watches him, wondering if our protagonist has no idea that he is completely naked. In the process of considering getting our protagonist some equipment, our protagonist suddenly places a hand on Bot's head, promising to come back and play with him. This causes Bot to reflect, thinking about when our protagonist was a baby. In addition, those were the exact words the previous hero, Arslad, once said to him. Regardless, he bids our protagonist farewell. From the sky tower, our protagonist leaps from the towering structure. Bot calls him reckless and hopes he doesn't die. Meanwhile, we shift to our protagonist, who is sky surfing without a parachute. Mid-air, our protagonist continues expressing his excitement, noting that he is finally free, and now he plans to continue living this way. In his excitement, the massive skeleton of a giant creature suddenly appears. Our protagonist is momentarily caught off guard by the sudden appearance. Still, he lands on the skeleton using a ninjutsu technique called Silent Step. This is a fundamental taijutsu technique that allows a ninja to conceal and erase their presence. At first, our protagonist assumes he has hit the ground, but upon closer inspection, he realizes the opposite. Looking from a different perspective, he seems to be on top of a giant dragon. Naturally, our protagonist states the obvious, saying he needs to climb down. However, something suddenly catches his attention. Our protagonist sees a sword. Seeing how elegant the sword looks, he grins and decides to keep it for himself. But at that moment, he unintentionally stares at his reflection. Our protagonist is completely caught off guard. He didn't expect to look exactly the same as in his previous life. He questions why, wondering if he was reincarnated or perhaps reborn. Remembering what happened and how he ended up in this world, our protagonist admits he has always wondered about the mysterious power that brought him here. Because of this, he explains that ninjutsu is the pinnacle of taijutsu techniques, achievable only through complete mastery and training. In other words, him being able to use ninjutsu even as a baby means he was reincarnated. However, he decides not to think about it for now, noting that he will eventually learn the truth when the time comes. And just like that, our protagonist begins his descent at incredible speed. Still on the spine, a party is seen discussing how long they need to continue before they finally reach their destination. The group becomes shocked when the leader casually reveals that they are just starting, causing the girl in the group to complain, noting that she is struggling to breathe because of the low oxygen. However, the leader ignores them. His eyes are fixed on their mission to acquire the Dragon Slayer. Fed up, he furiously screams at them for complaining too much. However, he only grows more furious as the group continues complaining. Even the girl adds that she wants to go home. Just before he can let out another round of screaming, the spine begins to tremble. A creature seems to be climbing the spine. It finally stops when it comes face to face with the party. Seeing them panic, the demon laughs, demanding to know if this bunch of fools are playing explorers and seeking the Dragon Slayer. The group, still panicking and sweating, didn't expect to run into a wandering armor. The wandering armor presents them with three choices. The first is that he kills them and takes their food. The second option is for them to jump and leave their food behind. Hearing this, the third option, becoming his slave, is immediately accepted by the leader, leaving his group members horrified. The armor is about to mention something about baby oil when our protagonist suddenly lands in their center, interrupting them. Clueless, he greets them warmly with a bright smile. Meanwhile, the wandering armor is more focused on the sword. It turns out the sword is the Dragon Slayer, an S-rank magic weapon capable of killing dragons. The group is stunned upon seeing our protagonist, and the girl attempts to cover her eyes but continues peeking while calling him a pervert. Act expresses shock as our protagonist suddenly appears from above, holding the Dragon Slayer. Smiling, our protagonist confirms his guess, casually adding that he fell from above, leaving the group in utter disbelief, while the girl continues peeking at him. Anyways, our protagonist offers to give the sword to Act, making him ask if he's serious. Our protagonist agrees, saying he'll trade the sword in exchange for Act's clothes. Moments later, our protagonist is wearing Act's clothes, while the girl makes a rude comment about Act's physique. Meanwhile, our protagonist is excited, noting that he finally has clothes on, even if they're all just D-rank items. The group, especially the girl, is shocked when our protagonist reveals he has been completely naked the entire time. The wandering armor, who has been silent the whole time, suddenly bursts into laughter. Feeling lucky, he comments on how the sword just conveniently appeared and got delivered to him. He declares that the sword belongs to him and moves to kill the group to secure it. The moment our protagonist's eyes turn crimson, you just know someone is cooked. And just like that, the wandering armor is suddenly sliced in two, leaving him in shock. Surprisingly, it wasn't our protagonist who dealt with him. Our protagonist then notices Act beginning to chuckle like a psycho. The guy is clearly being possessed by the sword, as he talks about how good it feels and how he wants to cut everything. Seeing this, one of his group members screams Act's name, asking what he thinks he's doing. The girl calmly explains that the Dragon Slayer is actually a cursed sword. In addition, anyone who fails to control it will completely lose their mind. However, our protagonist decides not to kill Act. At the same time, Act seems to regain some sense as our protagonist takes the sword from him. Our protagonist comments that if what the girl said is true, then leaving the sword behind would only invite disaster. In other words, he might be the only one capable of controlling and wielding it. Later, Act finally regains full consciousness. When he asks what happened while he was out, the girl calmly explains everything. She also begins to admire our protagonist, making the rest of the group realize that she has clearly fallen in love with him. Unfortunately for her, our protagonist has already left. Next, our protagonist places his hand on the ground and senses footsteps belonging to a human, along with another presence he can't quite identify. Still, he concentrates, knowing that if he tracks areas with high human activity, it will eventually lead him back to Hydrat. Suddenly, he senses movement that catches his attention, and he realizes he's close. Somewhere in the mountains, a pile of scattered monster corpses can be seen. One of them seems to still be alive, but in the next second, it gets crushed. The one responsible turns out to be a human, who then begins feeding on the remains of the monsters. Another voice addresses the girl by name, commenting that there are plenty of monsters to feed on, but asks why Meili has gotten smaller. The girl and the monster appear to be one and the same. Meanwhile, our protagonist has been observing her from afar, surprised to see someone actually eating monsters. Contrary to our expectations, our protagonist is actually looking forward to meeting Meili. After observing her for a while, our protagonist suddenly covers his ears, unable to believe the loud sound he is hearing. It turns out the sound is coming from Meili's stomach. Even after feasting on monsters, the girl is still hungry. Seeing this, her familiar, the monster, suggests they look around, noting there should be wolves left to eat. However, Meili isn't paying attention. Yeah, because our protagonist suddenly interrupts her, asking if she's in the middle of training. He says this because he remembers how, back then, he used to eat poisonous mushrooms every day as brutal training to increase his poison resistance. However, our protagonist is stunned when Meili suddenly appears right in front of him. He can tell she's fast. At the same time, she begins to drool from hunger. Seeing this, her familiar urges her to eat our boy. Our protagonist listens as it explains that they never imagined humans would exist in this world, since they've only been encountering wolves. It wonders why the girl is still hesitating and urges her to devour him. However, Meili refuses, saying she can't eat innocent people. This makes her familiar furious, reminding her that they have already died once. This causes our protagonist to question what they mean. He asks if they were perhaps reincarnated like him. When Meili's familiar wonders if that's what it's called, our protagonist beams, realizing he has found someone like himself. Seeing him act so casually and friendly, Meili panics, insisting that he shouldn't come any closer. She warns that she is a monster and could eat him. Our protagonist falls silent after hearing this. It turns out he remembers being called the same thing in his previous life. Putting on a reassuring smile, he notes that all reincarnators seem to be the same. Still smiling, our protagonist extends his hand, saying he doesn't mind. Meili becomes slightly emotional upon seeing his sincere expression. However, coming back to her senses, she unintentionally slaps his hand away. Seeing his confusion, she explains that she can't get along with people. At that moment, a massive monster suddenly appears out of nowhere. The giant werewolf turns out to be the boss, and it expresses its anger that Meili killed all its brothers. Our protagonist senses the beast's overwhelming killing intent. However, before he can act, Meili has already leaped forward with excitement, like a toddler spotting candy in a store. Just like that, the werewolf is devoured in an instant. Our protagonist is momentarily stunned by what he sees. He finds Meili interesting, so he naturally asks for her name. Meili formally introduces herself, giving her alias as the Cannibal Hood, the devourer of predators that harm humans. And as we already know, she is also a reincarnator like our protagonist. Our protagonist notes that she ate the entire monster, including the bones. Unfortunately, he is in a hurry and can't chat any longer, so he hopes they can meet again in the future. Blushing, she agrees to be friends. As she says this, she remembers her old companions from her previous life, before blurting out that it's probably useless, since she might end up eating them if they meet again in this life. Meanwhile, the storyline shifts to the east of Hydrat. A castle in that region is completely destroyed and engulfed in flames. As for those responsible, it turns out to be the previous hero party. Of course, Hyre and her companions now possess a Demon King seal. In the next chapter, our protagonist finally arrives at the east of Hydrat. Seeing the destruction, he can't help but ask himself what really happened. Concentrating, he focuses intently on his hearing. He begins to piece together what happened, and quickly realizes this is the work of demons, as his eyes turn crimson. Turning slightly, he notices that Meili has followed him. Apparently, he ran over a kilometer, yet she still managed to keep up with his speed. Because of this, our protagonist tells her to stop hiding and to just follow him if that's what she wants. The poor girl is confused after realizing our protagonist has discovered her. When her familiar insists that she should just become his friend, she panics and rejects the idea. After all, she was the one who ate her friends. Seeing her reaction, our protagonist tells her not to worry, adding that he is much stronger than her, meaning she wouldn't be able to eat him even if she tried. Our protagonist tells her to join him if that's what she wants. As for him, there is someone he needs to save. Yep, the girl is now blushing. The next scene takes us to a city close to Hydrat. Two siblings can be seen running for their lives. One of them accidentally trips and falls. Seeing this, his sister asks if he can still run. Becoming furious, the boy questions why they should keep running, especially when Hydrat is also under attack. Since there is nowhere left to go, the boy decides to fight, but his sister tries to stop him. However, in the next second, both of them freeze. Because the one who appears is the three-faced freak, Deperopapor. Approaching the siblings, he expresses his annoyance. He complains about his task of disposing of humans, noting that no one could have imagined the hero party achieving a higher rank among the 10 demons. The Demon King's contract grants power according to the darkness within a person. This means that even the so-called righteous heroes possess a lot of darkness. Worse still, the three-faced demon notes that he too was once a demon god, before adding that he was a failure. One of his faces corrects him mid-sentence, but regardless, he decides to vent his anger by killing more humans. The poor boy watches as his sister is instantly killed. Seeing his expression, Deeporupopor laughs, noting how satisfying his reaction is. Furious, the boy charges forward while activating his magic. However, his flame magic does absolutely zero damage. The demon can only chuckle at the pathetic display. Now he decides to send the boy to reunite with his sister. At that moment, the boy can only watch helplessly. But to his shock, the demon is suddenly caught off guard as the flames begin to intensify. Of course, that happens to be our protagonist's signature ninjutsu, borrowing the surrounding flames. Meanwhile, our protagonist enters, expressing mild surprise that the guy is getting roasted with such little firepower. Because of this, the demon demands to know our protagonist's identity. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Instead, he coldly demands to know where he can find Hyre and Miria. When the demon, still struggling, doesn't respond, our protagonist decides to warn him beforehand. Turning slightly, he insists that the demon shouldn't even think about trying to kill him unless he wants to find out what awaits him in the afterlife. Feeling insulted, the demon grows even more furious and moves to finish our protagonist. Well, as they say, experience is the best teacher. The attack hits our protagonist squarely, sending his body collapsing to the ground. The demon laughs triumphantly, thinking our protagonist was nothing but a bluff. However, it stiffens the moment it sees his body slowly fading. At the same time, our protagonist appears above its head, explaining that what the demon hit was only his afterimage. The demon, on the other hand, looks confused, wondering what kind of magic that was. Shocking enough, our protagonist reveals he used a genjutsu called Crimson Sight, which forces enemies to see afterimages and causes confusion. Our protagonist's condescending gaze irritates the demon. Enraged, the demon moves and attacks him again. Our protagonist vanishes and reappears, casually noting that the demon is too slow, a comment that makes the demon even more furious. As a result, it continues attacking relentlessly. However, our protagonist dodges like that one mosquito at 3 a.m., impossible to hit. As expected, our protagonist thinks to himself that this current form is his prime. At this point, the demon is completely cooked. With that, our protagonist activates his flame ninjutsu, Phantom Fire. A literal pillar of fire descends from above like a nuke, striking the demon directly. In an instant, it is completely incinerated and burned to a crisp. With that done, our protagonist walks away, commenting that the demon just wasted his time. He needs to hurry and find Hyri and Miria. Before fully disappearing, the demon suddenly reveals something interesting. It explains that the destruction of the city was caused by the previous heroes. Our protagonist is slightly caught off guard. The demon continues, explaining that the Demon King is cunning, having manipulated the previous heroes into destroying the last stronghold of humanity. In addition, it insists that our protagonist shouldn't waste his time trying to save them, since they are bound by the Demon King's seal, meaning saving them is out of the question. Our protagonist understands this means he may have to kill them. However, he notes he has a simple solution, because of course all he needs to do is kill the Demon King. Hearing this, the demon chuckles. It explains that the Demon King is born from laws outside this world before completely disintegrating. Unfortunately for it, the demon is unaware that our protagonist is literally the same. Approaching the green-haired boy, the boy hands our protagonist the Dragon Slayer back. Our protagonist is momentarily stunned, realizing he accidentally dropped the sword. Slightly panicked, he asks if the boy is fine and whether he wasn't even tempted while holding it. In response, the boy stares at him with genuine confusion. It's obvious the sword has no effect on him. Instead, the boy asks how he can become stronger. A bit saddened, he admits that if he were even a little as strong as our protagonist, he would have been able to protect his sister. Seeing this, our protagonist smiles. He then tells the boy to consider the sword a gift, leaving him in shock. At that moment, the ground begins to tremble. Our protagonist looks confused when the boy mentions that it is coming again. Shifting his gaze, our protagonist spots a meteor. His eyes widen in shock. The boy explains that the same thing happened in El Rado City, located in the east of Hydrat. This time, however, the meteor is heading directly toward Hydrat itself. He further explains that the meteor spell is an ancient magic, something only a sage could use. In other words, our protagonist realizes the boy is referring to Hyri. The next scene takes us to the royal capital, the last stronghold of humanity. Inside the ruined city, demons are enjoying themselves, destroying everything and slaughtering humans. From afar, a soldier insists they secure the gate, adding that the injured can wait. At the same time, a boy is crying for his father. The soldier is shocked when the boy breaks free and rushes toward him. The man is trapped under a massive boulder. Just then, two goblins appear. They've found yet another human to kill. The boy's father panics at the sight. To make things worse, a meteor is heading straight toward the city. Meanwhile, our protagonist is running at full speed toward the capital. He thinks to himself that even at his current speed, it will be difficult to reach the city before the meteor strikes. As a result, he activates Raiko Ninjutsu, lightning speed. In an instant, lightning and electricity course through his entire body. This high-level technique concentrates the body electricity and channels it to specific points. In simple terms, our protagonist just went full Barry Allen. He literally breaks the sound barrier and enters the city in a flash. As he arrives, he instantly kills the two goblins from before. Moments after his dramatic entrance, the boy's father is left completely stunned. Just then, our protagonist turns and sees that the man is still trapped. As he moves to lift the massive rock, the man insists he shouldn't bother, explaining that even 10 men couldn't move it. However, he chokes on his own words when our protagonist effortlessly lifts the boulder with just one hand. Meanwhile, our protagonist reflects that he came here to save Hyrie, yet he's putting others before his own goal. As expected, she really did teach him well. With that, our protagonist tosses the massive boulder slightly into the air and activates another lightning ninjutsu, lightning charge. Then he kicks the boulder like a ball straight toward the meteor. As we know, lightning is the natural counter to the earth element, and this technique infuses the object with lightning. As a result, the meteor is completely destroyed. The father and son stare in stunned amazement, along with the soldiers guarding the gate. Our protagonist reflects again, realizing that Hyrie made him understand he was never truly alone. Meanwhile, the man, still reeling from shock, realizes that our protagonist must be the new hero. At the same time, someone observes the destruction of the meteor from a distance. Unsurprisingly, it's Hyrie. She is in the process of activating yet another meteor spell when our protagonist suddenly appears, telling her to stop. Hyrie is caught off guard and doesn't recognize him, which makes sense. This is the first time she's seeing him, not as a baby. Eventually, she realizes it's our protagonist after taking a closer look. She apologizes, noting that negative emotions, especially hatred, can be overwhelming. Our protagonist doesn't quite follow, so Hyrie explains that she truly hates humans. If she doesn't kill all of them, they will eventually come back to torment her. Our protagonist watches her closely, realizing that the Demon King's contract seal is preventing her from controlling her emotions. He tries to speak, but Hyrie immediately cuts him off, insisting that the only way to stop her is by killing her. Right after that, she unleashes her highest-ranking fire magic, Karmic Inferno Annihilation. However, she is left shocked when our protagonist suddenly appears behind her. Pushing past her limits, she launches multiple high-ranking elemental spells and fuses them together. The result is catastrophic, something words can barely describe, and yet our protagonist walks through it like he's just farming aura. He calmly tells her he can sense that she isn't truly trying to kill him. Hyrie is stunned, not even understanding what he means. In response, our protagonist simply thanks her for everything she has taught him right before pulling her into a hug. Hyrie is left completely speechless. Seizing the moment, our protagonist reassures her, promising that he will free her by killing the Demon King. But in the very next instant, Arslad suddenly appears and stabs both of them with his sword. Yeah, our boy did not see that one coming. Seeing this, Arslad comments that our protagonist isn't a normal human. However, our protagonist's attention is entirely focused on Hyrie. At the same time, Miria enters the scene. Now our protagonist is no longer holding back. He's furious, and this time he's getting serious. Then our protagonist uses Finger Sever. However, Arslad easily dodges and vanishes. Our protagonist reflects on this and is surprised that someone like him could be caught off guard. Not only that, he didn't sense any killing intent from Arslad's surprise attack. Meanwhile, Arslad appears beside Hyrie, noting that for our protagonist to move with such a wound means he isn't normal. So, he naturally asks if our protagonist is the baby who was with Hyrie back then. Speaking of Hyrie, she completely heals her wounds using recovery magic. When she doesn't reply, Arslad notes that he doesn't care. After all, he plans to personally annihilate all humans. Just then, our protagonist senses an attack from Miria. He vanishes the moment her strike lands, leaving her confused. Meanwhile, our protagonist reappears at a distance. Trying to recover, he realizes that going up against them will be difficult. Each of them is attacking without the intent to kill, which is why he can't properly react to their attacks. But first, he needs to stop the bleeding. Of course, our protagonist has regenerative ninjutsu. This is a fundamental ninjutsu that focuses on accelerating metabolism, meaning it allows the body to heal quickly. Arslad suddenly appears behind him and comments on the strange technique. Our protagonist explains that, unlike magic, ninjutsu focuses on extreme training, abandoning one's identity. And if the person doesn't go mad, then congratulations, you're finally a ninja. The former hero finds the description of ninjutsu a bit interesting. However, he notes that our protagonist is lying. He says this because he only mastered ninjutsu by believing in himself and chasing after something. And the same applies to magic. This causes our protagonist to remember his crush from his previous life. He slightly acknowledges Arslad's remark. But right now, he declares that his main goal is to save Hyrie and Miria. meaning he doesn't give a damn about what happens to Arslad. Understanding our protagonist's unspoken words, Arslad smiles. Then he challenges him, insisting that our protagonist come at him with everything. The ground cracks as Arslad activates a magic spell that doubles his attack power. Meanwhile, our protagonist responds by unleashing and engulfing himself in phantom flames. Now both of them are about to go at it Dragon Ball Z style. The exchange begins mid-air, and both of them seem to be evenly matched. Once again, Arslad comments on our protagonist's strange technique. He doesn't sense the slightest trace of magic energy, and our protagonist doesn't even chant. From his observation, he thinks both magic and ninjutsu might come from the same origin, since they depend on human potential. Suddenly, our protagonist is cut. He didn't see the attack coming, and the one responsible turns out to be Miria. At the same time, he is hit by a fireball. Seeing this, Hyrie can only apologize. After the smoke settles, our protagonist is irritated. He can't properly sense their attacks because they're coming at him without the intent to kill. This makes him wonder if they are trying to resist the Demon King's seal, or perhaps each of them is attacking him in the hope that he would kill them. Regardless, our protagonist finds himself in a difficult situation because he doesn't know what he should do. In the middle of his contemplation, Arslad suddenly appears behind him in a flash. Swinging his sword, he unleashes an attack called Demon Light Sword at our protagonist. Our protagonist immediately responds with his flame ninjutsu, and both attacks clash violently. Seeing this, Arslad expresses joy. He has finally found a strong opponent. Because, yeah, he has been waiting for someone strong enough, someone who could eventually kill him. The story then shifts to his past. This was the period when Arslad and his party had just defeated the Demon King. Of course, he was the center of attention. However, that moment didn't last long. As he grew older, people could no longer recognize him. Worse, some even began to wonder if he was just a lost traveler, or perhaps a beggar. During all this time, the former hero could only wish for a moment when a new threat would appear. So when he overheard someone mention sightings of monsters in the West, he immediately decided to head there, thinking it was his duty as a hero. Unfortunately for him, the monster turned out to be a demon lord. The poor hero didn't even stand a chance. The Demon King, being cunning, decided not to kill him. Instead, he turned him into a demon. From that moment on, the desire to kill humans began to grow within him. From a young age, Arslad had always been stronger than his peers. His talent was extraordinary, and everyone had high hopes for him to become a hero. Since he was the strongest, it was natural for him to protect the weak. But the current Demon King claims that was all nonsense, that people only wanted to use him. Honestly, the Demon King is a professional gaslighter. From that point on, Arslad began to question himself. Eventually, he started to believe that he wasn't qualified to be a hero. Now it makes sense why he wants our protagonist to kill him, perhaps to prevent himself from going completely mad, and it seems the rest of his former party members are wired with the same mindset. Back in the present, since our protagonist doesn't know the Demon King's location, he wonders if he really needs to kill them. Because of this, he decides to stop them instead. This time, our protagonist uses Shaka Fuma Clan's 12 forbidden arts, Scorching Transformation. After the dust and smoke settle, our protagonist appears with his muscles tensed, his body engulfed in flames. This ninjutsu is far stronger than Phantom Flame. It turns the body into something like an explosive weapon, but it also puts a heavy strain on the user, with a destructive radius of over 100 meters. Our protagonist successfully knocks out the hero's party. However, as a consequence, the Demon King suddenly appears, calling them a useless bunch. As expected, anyone he deems useless gets killed. Our protagonist watches as the contract seal tightens around Hyrie's neck. Meanwhile, Hyrie turns to him and thanks him for saving them with a smile. Seeing this, our protagonist begins to reflect on what Arslad said earlier about how magic and ninjutsu might come from the same source, both relying on human potential. At the same time, he remembers the spell Hyrie once used on Elva in the previous chapter. Because of this, our protagonist decides to imitate Hyrie and attempts his first magic spell, freezing sacred stigmata. Before continuing the story, we get a bit of context about magic. It explains that in ancient times, during the battles against the gods, magic was the only power both humans and demons used to resist. In addition, magic works by materializing chi within the body through spells, resulting in the release of supernatural energy. Now, our protagonist attempts to copy Hyrie's magic. Suddenly, energy begins radiating from his body and it keeps intensifying. Watching this, Hyrie is completely shocked. She can tell it's the ancient spell freezing sacred stigmata, but she can't understand how our protagonist is able to use it. Not only that, the power feels far greater, something she has never seen before. After our protagonist finishes casting the spell, Hyrie is stunned. The Demon King's seal has completely disappeared. Even more shocking, her body doesn't disintegrate like Elva's did in the previous chapter. Seeing that our protagonist is about to collapse, she immediately rushes to support him. This time, she genuinely thanks him for saving her. Meanwhile, our protagonist feels relieved that she has finally come back to her senses. He explains that he cast the spell without thinking, but it seems he was able to imitate her. In response, Hyrie tells him that she has never seen such magic before. She believes that his ninjutsu somehow amplifies his magic. In other words, he has successfully fused both magic and ninjutsu. While our boy is still processing all this, Miria is shocked that the Demon King's seal has disappeared. She also expresses relief, saying she no longer feels hatred toward humans. She's even about to appoint our protagonist as the next war chief in the capital, when suddenly, our protagonist appears behind her and touches her ears. This time, she slaps him hard, calling him a pervert and pointing out that her ears are a sensitive area. Meanwhile, Arslad quietly observes everything. Unfortunately, not everyone made it. Still, he smiles, recognizing our protagonist as the new hope of the world. Perhaps the reason he didn't survive is because he is human and has already lived beyond his natural lifespan. Even so, Arslad seems disappointed that he couldn't fully carry out his duty as a hero. In the middle of his thoughts, Hyrie gently sends him off by kissing his head. To her, Arslad truly did a great job. Her wish for him is simple, for him to finally rest. Her actions make him reflect on the time they spent together. Amid everyone's gaze, he slowly fades away. Miria also sends him off, hoping they will meet again in the afterlife. Interrupting the moment, our protagonist calls out to Hyrie. His sudden request to learn all the magic she knows catches her slightly off guard. Soon folks from the city, the one the artist didn't even bother to fully draw, gather around our protagonist. Apparently, they witnessed everything he did and now believe he is the new hero. Our protagonist feels a bit embarrassed as everyone begins thanking him. From Hyrie and her friends, to the boy he once gave the Dragon Slayer, and of course Meili watching quietly from a distance, everyone has their eyes on him. Even Sylvain, the former Demon King, shows up just to see our protagonist before disappearing. Meanwhile, our protagonist is still trying to figure out how to respond, when the boy he saved suddenly runs up and hugs him. The little guy beams with joy as he personally thanks our protagonist for saving his father. Once again, our protagonist feels that strange emotion. He reflects on his past life, unable to believe that someone like him, who once killed just to survive, is now willing to protect others. Deep in his heart, our boy thanks Hyrie for helping him understand what it truly means to fight for someone other than himself. Meanwhile, a miniature dragon watches everything unfold. The creature seems to be the same one that has been observing events all along, and possibly the one responsible for bringing our protagonist into this world. Things get a bit tricky here, but it's clear that some higher beings are discussing our protagonist. In summary, they find him interesting, especially noting that he has even mastered magic, which to them is expected since he is one of the reincarnated. Now, the beings begin to wonder which of them will be the one to kill the current Demon King. Meanwhile, the Demon King is furious, especially after seeing how easily our protagonist broke his seal. The narrative reveals that because of this, the demons begin to truly trample the world. Having lost 5 of his 10 generals, the Demon King now sees our protagonist as a serious threat. His objective shifts from recruiting him to completely annihilating him. Anyways, we fast forward to 6 months later. In the middle of nowhere, a figure is seen holding a massive sword. The figure looks around, clearly disappointed that this place has also been destroyed. Just then, the one responsible appears, a demon. Surprised, the demon comments that there's still a survivor. This demon is a strange hybrid of an orc and a lizard man. Honestly, someone out there made some questionable life choices. But before anything else can happen, in the next second it gets sliced clean in two. The hybrid demon is completely obliterated by the figure who turns out to be a girl. And here's the real twist. The girl, Jeanne d'Arc, is actually a reincarnator. Even more shocking, the massive sword she's carrying, way bigger than her frame, is an SSS rank weapon called necromance, a terrifying blade that evolves by consuming blood. Anyways, the hybrid demon expresses shock at its easy defeat, especially since it was supposed to be part of the next generation of the 10 demons. Still, it is even more shocked when it eventually recognizes Jane Dark. It turns out the girl single-handedly cleared the West Continent, which was controlled by the 10 demons. In other words, she is something of a hero. However, Jeanne d'Arc has heard enough, so she crushes what remains of the hybrid. Now Jeanne listens closely. She comments that even on this continent, she can hear many voices of lament, so she wonders if God is telling her to fight. Meanwhile, something seems to be observing her. It turns out to be a griffin. This one seems to be the same creature that was observing our protagonist in the previous chapter. Just like our protagonist, it also finds the girl very interesting and looks forward to their growth. Before we proceed, the narrative finally talks about the reincarnators, since they are now popping up like soda cans. Anyways, they are people who have received favor from the one who sees the world. Each reincarnator possesses transcendent power. For that reason, they are hated, despised, used, and even revered. However, despite having great power, they are essentially incomplete souls filled with strong regret and unfulfilled desires. Now, if these reincarnators grow and master the power of this world, presumably magic, they will be able to rival even gods. Let's jump back to the story. A massive magic circle suddenly appears above Jeanne d'Arc. From the circle, a high-ranking demon appears along with 2 dragons. Smirking, Igni, the third among the 10 demons, wonders if Jeanne is the one responsible for killing the lower-ranked demons. She doesn't respond. Seeing this, he becomes arrogant, noting that he likes her appearance. As he begins to cast his magic, he boasts that he has conquered countless dragons and grown stronger, so dealing with her will be as easy as swatting a fly. And just like that, Igni unleashes his attack, Belial Harrow Hellfire. At the same time, Jeanne d'Arc uses her own technique, Ioro Divine Oracle Sword. Igni's dragons are cut in 2. Meanwhile, Igni finally realizes that the girl is a reincarnator with a triple S-rank weapon, which he calls cheating. And just like that, he is struck down. Meanwhile, Jeanne d'Arc declares that she is a child of God, and she will cut down every evil. Because of this, Igni insists that she die with him. Just as he attempts to use a magic spell to curse her, our protagonist suddenly appears and saves her in time. Igni watches as his magic is depleted by our protagonist's barrier, leaving him in utter shock, because this was supposed to be impossible. Meanwhile, Jeanne d'Arc is stunned when our protagonist suddenly vanishes from inside the barrier. He reappears in front of Igni. Our protagonist responds with his own curse technique, Zaram, Ninjutsu, Instant Death Curse Eye. At that moment, Igni realizes our protagonist's identity, though a bit too late, acknowledging that the guy is on a completely different level, and just like that, he explodes. Our protagonist comments about freeing the world from oppression. With Igni dead, it means only 2 ranked demons remain. Meanwhile, Jeanne d'Arc stares at our protagonist for a moment before asking why he saved her. She can already tell he is strong and not a normal person, yet she wants to understand his ideals and how he plans to free the world from oppression. In response, our protagonist says it's simple. All he needs to do is kill anyone and everyone who tries to control others, because to him, every living thing deserves to be free, including himself. Jeanne reflects on his words for a bit. The idea of freedom doesn't quite sit well with her. Considering she is a child of God with a mission, freedom sounds more like wishful thinking to her. Anyways, she is puzzled when our protagonist points out that she is a reincarnator. He can tell just by looking at her. Jeanne d'Arc's eyes show that she has crossed the line between life and death countless times. In addition, her eyes are exactly the same as his. Even so, she doesn't believe him. She thinks she was brought here by her god to carry out judgment, and she asks if that means our protagonist is the same as her. Our protagonist doesn't fully understand her perspective, but he says it's something similar. He further explains that he has met people like her before. Every single one of them has surpassed the limits of humans and can be considered monsters. In addition, he believes each of them was reincarnated into this world for some kind of purpose. He even suspects the same thing might have happened to the current Demon King, and wonders if this means all reincarnators are under the jurisdiction of a higher existence. Hearing this, Jeanne d'Arc asks if he is referring to God. He isn't sure, but in truth, he doesn't care. Whether it's God or Buddha, as long as they control people, he won't let them get away with it. It seems the girl isn't exactly on the same wavelength as our protagonist. The storyline then shifts to a different location, specifically the edge of the world. In that place, Two figures meet. One of them turns out to be the slime, the first demon. He comments that he has finally found him and that he has been dying to meet this person. However, the other individual doesn't share the slime's enthusiasm. Shockingly, this person is revealed to be not just a ninja, but the first reincarnator, Fuma Kotaro, the first. Rimuru from Temu is intrigued by Fuma Kotaro's rejection. He then informs him that he is the strongest among the 10 demons. Nonetheless, the slime tells Fuma Kotaro the first that there is someone very strong, and he wants him to fight that person on his behalf. In response, the ninja simply stares at him with cold-killing intent. The slime is slightly shaken by his gaze. Coldly, Fuma Kotaro asks if the slime is really ordering him around, before calling it trash, not even worth his attention. Hearing this, the slime apologizes, but just before leaving, it pauses. After all, it didn't like being called trash, especially when it is the top dog and the strongest demon in the entire demon race. So yeah, the slime decides to teach him some manners by unleashing its strongest magic attack, a combination spell using simultaneous deployment. Meanwhile, throughout the entire casting, Fuma Kotaro just stares at him without reacting. The slime's magic attack results in a massive explosion that rocks the entire plane. Seeing this, the slime lets out a mocking laugh. But in the very moment of his triumph, the Fuma clan ninja makes his move. The slime is shocked as it is suddenly sliced in two. Immediately, the ninja follows up with multiple finger sever attacks. Now, the slime is cut into multiple pieces. Fuma Kotaro, the first, looks irritated by this world's elemental mastery. He calls it pathetic and boring, adding that none of them have come close to the realm of ninjutsu. Basically, to him, magic is trash. The slime feels insulted hearing this and becomes furious. It declares that now it is truly angry, and at the same time splits itself into multiple clones. It taunts the ninja, asking if he thinks he can withstand all of them using their ultimate attacks at once. However, before it can even finish its sentence, Fuma Kotaro has already delivered another finger sever. This time, the slime is cut into countless tiny pieces, beyond regeneration. Rimuru just left the chat. Meanwhile, Fuma Kotaro the first becomes furious. His killing intent surges as irritation fills him, because everyone in this world is weak. None of them have ever made his blood boil. Anyways, before we proceed, the narrative gives us some context about Fuma Kotaro the first. This guy isn't just the creator of all Fuma clan ninjutsu. He is the very founder of the clan itself. All later ninjutsu are merely imitations. He alone created the true source of ninjutsu. At this point, you could even call him the god of shinobi. Those who inherit his name are feared as immortals. Back to the story, the current demon king is impressed by Fuma Kotaro the first's display of strength. At the same time, we shift back to our protagonist, Angina Dark. Our protagonist suddenly senses something. However, the girl watches him with a puzzled expression. But our protagonist isn't mistaken. The presence he just felt, that overwhelming killing intent. It makes him wonder just what kind of monster is radiating it. Our protagonist thinks he has found the Demon King, so he asks the girl if she is joining him to face the demons. She doesn't respond. Instead, she reflects on our protagonist's previous statement, particularly the one where he intends to go against the gods and obtain freedom. It's safe to say a world without oppression isn't within her ideals. Once again, she thinks to herself that, as a child of God, her mission is to carry out the divine will even in this world, including our protagonist's idea. It all seems like wishful thinking to her. With this in mind, she boldly tells our protagonist that she can't accompany him. In addition, she strongly believes that the next time they meet, they might even be enemies. Damn, girl, you're saying that to someone who can kill your god, that is, if he truly exists. Still, she admits it is thanks to our protagonist that she is alive, so she thanks him and swears she will definitely repay this debt. Hearing this, our protagonist shows a bright smile and looks forward to when they will eventually meet again. With that, our protagonist activates his teleportation ninjutsu. There is no description of the ninjutsu itself, so it is left to our imagination. Meanwhile, Angina Dark is left behind, still reflecting on our protagonist's concept of freedom. Our protagonist finally teleports to the ends of the world. Moments after his arrival, it seems like a fight is about to break out. The second-rank demon is about to battle Fuma Kotaro the first. The demon begins to surround himself with chi as he prepares his magic. Swinging his sword, the demon uses a magic attack similar to the previous hero's magic, Light Chain. Fuma Kotaro the first responds by using Kazaguruma, Wind Demon Frenzy. Seeing this, our protagonist is stunned. He didn't expect the second-ranked demon's opponent to be a ninja like him. Meanwhile, the Demon King compliments Fuma Kotaro I. In addition, he can sense the dark emotions within him. Those emotions are fitting for someone destined to become a member of the demon race. His intentions are clear. He plans to make him a rank demon. Just as the second-ranked demon is about to launch an attack at Fuma Kotaro, our protagonist enters, one-shotting the demon using Finger Sever. Now all the ranked demons are dead, and our protagonist tells the Demon King his time is up. The Demon King is shocked by our protagonist's sudden appearance. It turns out the Demon King never intended to confront him directly. He was just scheming and looking for a way to bring him to the demon's side. Becoming enraged, he notes our protagonist has ruined his plans, so now he plans to kill him. Hearing the Demon King address our protagonist as Fuma Kotaro V, the first Fuma Kotaro begins to piece things together. Now he shows a wide smile. Perhaps the man has just found a worthy opponent. Without wasting time, our protagonist begins by using the Grand Magic Light Explosion spell, which results in a massive explosion across the plains. The Demon King appears unharmed after the attack. Expressing surprise, he wonders when our protagonist was able to use magic, and he finds this very interesting. Our protagonist expected this. Apparently, he was just testing to see if magic really doesn't work on the Demon King. Meanwhile, the Demon King seems confused in contrast to the first Fuma Kotaro, who seems intrigued. Nonetheless, our protagonist uses Chigai Ninjutsu, Blood Shell, causing his blood to spread through his entire body and transform into armor. Apparently, this is an advanced ninjutsu. Radiating pure killing intent, our protagonist informs the Demon King to get serious, while throwing a jab and calling him a half-assed failure of a Demon King. His words seem to trigger the Demon King. As expected, the Demon King wouldn't be the final boss if he didn't have some kind of complex. Now absolutely furious, he roars at our protagonist, saying he is the true Demon King. Switching his focus to the first Fuma Kotaro, he attempts to use his contract seal to make him his subordinate by offering to increase his power by amplifying his dark and negative emotions. However, Fuma Kotaro just looks at the seal on his neck with mild annoyance. The guy literally removes the seal by snapping his finger. His power level and aura are beyond Goku. Meanwhile, the Demon King can't believe what he is seeing. Our protagonist, on the other hand, just shakes his head. He asks the Demon King if he thinks such cheap tricks could work on a ninja. The Demon King becomes furious because he is being looked down on. As a result, he enters his space and unleashes his true form. Next, he taunts them, asking if they really think they can challenge a god, and at the same time prepares an attack from his mouth. The attack hits, and part of the blast reshapes the plains. Unbeknownst to the current Demon King, Sylvain suddenly appears. Maybe the guy came to observe, or perhaps returned stronger for round 2. Our protagonist is unharmed by the Demon King's attack. He explains that as long as he is wearing his blood shell armor, he doesn't feel anything. Just then, our protagonist shifts his gaze. He sees Fuma Kotaro wearing the same armor. Seeing this, our protagonist begins to wonder about his identity, since he obviously doesn't know the guy. Seeing this, the Demon King becomes furious. Letting out an ear-deafening roar, spikes begin rising from beneath the ground. Our protagonist easily evades them, commenting that everything the Demon King touches breaks. Because of this, our protagonist decides to finish him quickly. However, the Demon King suddenly attacks him. Our protagonist is hit. However, that was only his afterimage. The real him is already running toward the Demon King. Using lightning speed ninjutsu, our protagonist dashes and suddenly appears before the Demon King. Because of this, the Demon King doesn't understand how our protagonist is much stronger than him. He demands to know who our protagonist is. Our protagonist wonders what the Demon King is talking about, because he already knows who he is. Hearing this, the Demon King laughs, noting that just like him, both of them were brought into this world and are nothing but toys of the gods. Saying this, he launches an attack at our protagonist. In response, our protagonist prepares the 12 Fuma's 12 forbidden arts, Fumadan. With that, the Demon King is struck by an invisible force. He is sent underground by our protagonist. Seeing this, our protagonist follows him. Our protagonist didn't expect there to be another world beneath the earth. Anyways, he and the Demon King eventually land. Once the dust settles, our protagonist provokes the Demon King, calling him a persistent bastard. Meanwhile, the Demon King slowly emerges from his eye, revealing his final form. Upon revealing his final form, he immediately tells our protagonist to kneel. Our protagonist seems confused at first before he is suddenly pushed down by an invisible force. He is left confused, wondering what is happening. This is when the Demon King reveals that this is the power of a god, that all his words become reality, and this is also his unique godly skill called verbal reality. Our protagonist still doesn't understand, so the Demon King tells him to tremble in fear, because now he can kill him however he wants and however he pleases. So when he tells our protagonist to die and be consumed by poison, our protagonist immediately feels the effects. However, in the next moment, the Demon King is struck by our protagonist's ninjutsu attack. However, he only scoffs, saying his body can still endure one more attack. With this, our protagonist simply calls him a failure. The Demon King doesn't respond. Instead, he screams for our protagonist to die. In response, our protagonist tells him to shut up, and immediately the Demon King's mouth clenches shut. Our protagonist uses the ability once again. This time, he destroys the Demon King in a flash using Death Frenzy. The Demon King is shattered into multiple pieces. Meanwhile, Death Frenzy is explained as an advanced ninjutsu that immediately boosts physical attributes by secreting adrenaline. In his last moments, the Demon King realizes our protagonist has just used a divine technique. Now he finally understands why our protagonist managed to learn magic in such a short time. In other words, our protagonist's unique technique is copy, meaning our protagonist has the ability to copy any technique. And just like that, the Demon King is defeated. Meanwhile, the previous Demon King and the first Fuma Kotaro watch. Fuma Kotaro realizes our protagonist is the one who inherited his name and finds it interesting. In this chapter, our protagonist looks up at the sky from where he came from. He wonders if the world can finally become a place where everyone can smile. Hearing this, the previous Demon King tells him that it is meaningless. He explains that conflict breeds hatred, and that cycle will never end. No matter how much he kills, it won't solve anything. Our protagonist tells him that he's the one misunderstanding. He already knows that, because the same happened in his world. Conflicts can never truly end. So what he is saying is this: he's not trying to save the world, rather he simply hates anyone who oppresses others, that's all. Hearing this, the first Fuma Kotara laughs, saying he likes him even more, and that this is what's expected of being a ninja. After all, ninjas are crazed battle fools who know nothing but killing, and now he is restless after seeing such a strong opponent. Meanwhile, our protagonist still hasn't realized the guy's identity. Suddenly, the first Fuma Kotara appears before him in a flash, recognizing our boy as a worthy opponent, and adding that he expected this from someone who inherited his name. That's when our protagonist begins to piece things together. However, before our protagonist can respond, the man explains how no one has ever been able to satisfy his desire. In simple terms, every opponent he met was trash. After killing so many, he came to a staggering conclusion. The only person who could satisfy his desire was someone like himself. He never imagined that wish could actually come true. Meanwhile, our protagonist thinks to himself that he has no right to fight this guy. However, he cannot ignore someone trying to kill him. Seeing this, the first Fuma Kotara insists they give it a try, and just like that, both of them are ready to go at it before they are suddenly engulfed by something. In an instant, they are lifted upward when a voice suddenly speaks, addressing them as the chosen heroes who defeated the Demon King. Hearing this, our protagonist immediately recognizes the voice. Apparently, it belongs to the same being that brought him into this world after his death. Meanwhile, the previous Demon King follows them, asking what's going on. In response, our protagonist tells him not to worry, adding that he already knows the guy has been watching him the entire time, so he thanks him. Feeling flustered, the previous Demon King insists he wasn't particularly interested in him. In other words, he wasn't stalking him. Anyways, our protagonist tells him to let the others know that he will definitely come back alive. Hearing this, the guy is stunned before agreeing to pass on his message, and just like that, both he and the first Fuma Kotara are teleported out of the dimension. In the next chapter, our protagonist and the first Fuma Kotaro are taken to a different place. Our protagonist observes the endless watery plain and immediately realizes, in shock, where they are. Because yes, this is the exact place the finger that brought him into this world came from. Snapping back to reality, our protagonist dodges a surprise attack from the first Fuma Kotaro. Seeing this, the man praises our protagonist's reaction and suggests he may have revealed too much killing intent. When our protagonist asks if he plans to fight in such a strange place, he scoffs, saying he doesn't care. What truly matters to him is fighting a strong opponent. Hearing him addressed as the first Fuma Kotaro, our protagonist realizes he is the real deal. He remembers from his previous life that, after the brutal test where he killed his crush, the Hojo clan representative gave him that name. Our protagonist reflects that the real Fuma Kotaro was born from a mountain of corpses. Since childhood, the battlefield was his playground. Basically, the first education he received was learning how to kill. Anyways, our protagonist notes the guy was a monster. So him inheriting that name made him seem immortal, and forever he would remain a legend. Not to mention, the Hojo clan, who commands the Fuma, would be feared. Even then, our protagonist realizes that he is being used. After all, ninjas are nothing but disposable pawns. Freedom, and even a name, is unattainable as long as he is a ninja. Now back to the present. Our protagonist comments about the strongest ninja. Since they both bear the same name, our protagonist activates his flame ninjutsu, declaring that whoever wins will become the real Fuma Kotaro. Of course, the first smiles wickedly, as if he has been waiting for this. Accepting the challenge, he uses his own ninjutsu, surrounding himself with flames, and just like that, the fight begins. Both of them are evenly matched. They vanish and continuously exchange blows, like what someone would expect from a Dragon Ball Z fight. Throughout the entire battle, the first Fuma Kotaro is thrilled to the bone. He can tell how much training and suffering our protagonist had to endure to reach such a level 1 unachievable by ordinary people. He had waited for someone like our protagonist for a long time. The first Fuma Kotaro calls our protagonist a worthy opponent and insists they fight to their heart's content. Interestingly enough, our protagonist feels the same. He wants to test himself and see if he has what it takes to beat the real OG. Meanwhile, the first Fuma Kotaro uses this chance to reflect on his backstory. As we already know, the guy was born, or rather, he crawled his way out of a mountain of corpses. As a baby, the only way he could survive was by feasting on corpses. Eventually, he discovered how to use ninjutsu by himself, making people think he was cursed. At the same time, he encountered a group of ninjas for the first time, who asked about his identity. When he expressed confusion, one ninja insisted he not play dumb. He pointed out that the guy was using ninjutsu, so he asked once more for his name. Before adding that ninjas are killing machines that know nothing but killing, the word killing seemed to catch his attention, so he asked excitedly if this meant the group of ninjas were strong. The ninja seemed confused. Before he died, the whole group was wiped out, as Fuma Kotaro admits the reason he kills is because he feels and understands the reason he was born. He knew this even before he became a ninja. Killing was all he knew. Back to the fight, after a massive collision with our protagonist, his blood shell armor shatters. At the same time, he smiles. He compliments our protagonist's incredible technique and decides to try something else. However, just before both of them can resume fighting, someone suddenly appears between them. Both ninjas are stunned, and our protagonist seems to recognize the newcomer. The person turns out to be Meili. Both she and her familiar have no idea what is happening. At the same time, other people descend and enter the space. Our protagonist begins to realize the people entering the space are all reincarnators, and perhaps heroes from a different world. To his shock, more are on their way. The moment everyone arrives, our protagonist becomes serious. As he notes, every one of them is far from normal. In addition, everyone seems hostile to anyone. This makes the first Fuma Kotaro furious that these people interrupted his death duel with our protagonist. Suddenly, the entire watery plain begins to tremble. A massive tentacle suddenly emerges from the ground, numerous tentacles. At the same time, one tentacle extends upward, revealing itself to be the one responsible for their reincarnation. Skipping introductions, the Flaming Eye notes that they are all reincarnators and have successfully killed their world's demon king. As for the reason they were summoned, it is because the gods need more blood for themselves and the great god tree. It explains the world tree, noting this place is the root of this world. In addition, its branches pierce all worlds and bind them to the tree trunk. This is the concept of the world tree, Yggdrasil. Anyways, all the reincarnators are currently at the base of the tree. The worlds connected to the tree are sustained by the bloodshed that converges at the base. Thanks to the reincarnators killing the Demon King, the flow of blood was ensured. However, the blood isn't enough. It becomes clear the gods brought them here to kill each other, but that alone wouldn't be interesting, since some of them have grown attached to the worlds they were reborn into, so the gods have decided to make things more interesting themselves. The being declares that the world each reincarnator was reborn into will be destroyed if they die. So if they care for their world and don't want to lose it, they have to kill and survive. Furthermore, it informs them about a reward for the reincarnator who kills the most and sheds the most blood. This causes one of the reincarnators to comment that if these beings are gods, they are really messed up. Meanwhile, another's sole wish is to obtain the verbal reality skill. As each of them is sent to different layers, our protagonist thinks to himself that if he dies, then Hiyori and everyone else will die as well. And just like that, every reincarnator is sent to a different layer world. The next scene takes us to a world filled with forest vines. A reincarnator is successfully teleported into the world. The person turns out to be Gina, who calmly observes her surroundings. She is currently in the 16th layer world, Gripshire, a world covered with infinite forests. At the same time, other reincarnators begin to appear. Seeing them, she narrows her gaze, as usual, wondering if this is a test from God. Elsewhere, in a different layer world, the first Fumakotaro has just arrived. At first, after observing his surroundings, he is confused and wonders if he is in a layer world, because the place is just an endless plain of brick floor with nothing in sight. Well, actually, this is the 32nd layer world, Batrarth, a world of vast nothingness. Seeing this, the first Fumakotaro concludes that this makes the world perfect for a fight. His thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of another reincarnator. The newcomer sees him and asks by chance if Fumakotaro happens to be a ninja. The newcomer is Ishikawa Goemon. He says this because he can tell from Fumakotaro's aura. Fumakotaro becomes interested when Ishikawa suggests they have a ninja battle. When Fumakotaro asks if this means the guy is a ninja, he confirms, now properly introducing himself as a rogue ninja from the Iga clan. After saying this, he teleports. He and Fumakotaro have a quick exchange, Dragon Ball Z style. Because of this brief exchange, Ishikawa is excited, as he is convinced Fumakotaro is a true ninja. Fumakotaro nods in response, noting things are about to become interesting. Ishikawa responds by punching the ground. The earth begins to crack, the fractures spreading steadily toward Fumakotaro. Fumakotaro shows a puzzled yet unreadable expression. Seeing this, Ishikawa uses a Hibari ninjutsu, Fire Needle. Immediately, scorching magma shoots up from underground. Fumakotaro manages to dodge, though he can't hide his surprise that the guy can pull magma out of nowhere. In the middle of his contemplation, Ishikawa vanishes, and suddenly reappears behind Fumakotaro, intending to catch him off guard. However, his attack misses, prompting him to compliment Fumakotaro. Thrilled by the fight, Ishikawa reveals his unique skill, expression mind reading. It allows him to tell what Fumakotaro is thinking just by looking at him. The only problem is that Fumakotaro is so fast he can dodge before Ishikawa can react. He then insists that Fumakotaro reveal his own unique skill, noting that it would be way more fun to try killing each other that way. Hearing this, Fumakotaro smiles. He calmly explains that his unique skill is Death Sight. He can see how someone or any living thing will die. And in Ishikawa's case, he wouldn't last 10 seconds. Naturally, Ishikawa is shocked after hearing this. Still, he launches himself forward, declaring that he will overturn that fate. After a long and intense battle, both ninjas eventually stop to catch their breath. Ishikawa then laughs mockingly, pointing out that he's still alive. But in the very next second, he realizes he spoke way too soon. Finally understanding, Ishikawa reads Fumakotaro's expression and learns his true identity. The fool bursts into laughter. He had just challenged the man who created all ninjutsu. From the very beginning, his defeat was guaranteed. After Ishikawa dies, Fumakotaro notes that it's a shame, but admits the boy was quite amusing. Not long after, another reincarnator enters the world. This time, the person turns out to be our protagonist. The original Fumakotaro sees him, and never imagined he would get the chance to face him once again. Meanwhile, our protagonist initially thinks to himself that there isn't much difference in strength between him and the first Fumakotaro, but after reflecting on their previous clash, he immediately dismisses that notion. Back then, the man was smiling, meaning he was enjoying the fight and wasn't even serious. He explains that Kotaro I is the creator of ninjutsu, while the techniques he himself uses are merely imitations of the original. Normally, that would mean he doesn't stand a chance, but our protagonist isn't one to give up. He believes that if he wants to surpass him, he needs to grow, otherwise he will lose. With that resolve, Kotaro I becomes fired up. He challenges our protagonist, insisting they continue their deathmatch. Hearing this, our protagonist activates Flame Ninjutsu along with Death Frenzy. His flames intensify instantly. Seeing this, the first Kotaro smiles like a menace and responds by activating his own Death Frenzy. The clash of their attacks results in a massive explosion. The entire plane is wiped out, followed by a series of continuous exchanges. During the fight, Kotaro I tells our protagonist that he knows about his verbal reality divine skill, that our protagonist could simply end the fight by commanding him to die. Our protagonist replies that doing so would be pointless. In his previous life, he wasn't allowed to make any decisions for himself or possess anything. But this time is different. Not only has he gained freedom, but he can now express emotions and truly live as a human. And more importantly, the name Kotaro belongs to the strongest ninja, someone he wants to surpass using nothing but ninjutsu. Otherwise, everything else would be meaningless. Kotaro I acknowledges his words, calling them wonderful. Since our protagonist is giving it his all, he declares that he will respond in kind. Because of that, he tells our protagonist that he can already see how he will die. After using his skill, Kotaro can tell our protagonist will live for a while. Immediately, both of them use lightning ninjutsu. Lightning fires, and Kotaro's blood shell shatters as he expresses shock. In contrast, our protagonist seems unfazed. In that instant, he realizes that, just like the dead Demon King, our protagonist is about to copy his ninjutsu. Even more shocking, his lightning is way stronger. Our protagonist seems to be a copy ninja. Regardless, the fight continues. This time, our protagonist copies Kotaro's great lightning fire, causing an eye-blinding explosion. Mid-fight, Kotaro thinks to himself that, as expected, our protagonist's death is still far off. He believes he will eventually see the way he will kill our protagonist. No matter how many ninjutsu techniques he copies, Kotaro is confident that with the countless battles he has fought, our protagonist will eventually meet his end. After what seems like eternity, Kotaro I meets his end and thinks to himself that our protagonist is truly worthy of the name. It turns out that as a child, he obviously had no name, so people naturally decided to call him Kotaro because he was the strongest ninja. In his final moments, the man acknowledges our protagonist as the real Kotaro. In other words, Kakashi from another world. Anyways, when he expresses thanks to our protagonist for making him feel alive, our protagonist notes he had learned a lot from him. In addition, he plans on getting stronger because now he has people he wishes to protect. The previous Kotaro thinks about it and comments that it wasn't a bad idea. Who would have imagined a ninja who knew nothing but killing for himself would decide to protect others? The next scene shows us the world tree. One of the worlds from the branches begins to collapse before getting completely destroyed. Another world seems to be on fire, its residents in chaos. It turns out one of the reincarnators decides to speedrun the entire process by killing people just to pass time. Our protagonist overhears this. In the past, killing used to be everything to him. He never imagined a day like this would come. While thinking about this, another reincarnator suddenly appears. The fool laughs, seeing our protagonist is his next opponent. Our protagonist immediately warns him, for his own sake, that he better not direct killing intent toward him. That statement makes the reincarnator furious. In the next second, our protagonist appears before him in a flash. Next, he smashes the guy headfirst into the ground. Actually, our protagonist uses a ninjutsu technique to crush his brain. With that, our protagonist declares his name and insists the bastard takes it to his grave.